Good afternoon. Today is February 14th. Welcome to the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee. First, I would like to say happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And everyone has a little stress relief and another little something on your desk from me and a little gift from Hartman from Buckle and Hornberger.
That's from my buddy Wayne on it right here.
And my lovely flowers from my beautiful, beautiful Sora, my Madam Vice Chair. Thank you. And yes, and I got balloons from Huckle from the Republican caucus. Thank you very much. See the love? We have love in the room. Love in the room. Okay, so Mr. Chair, would you like to come up? He has a committee to go run. Calling House Bill 475, Mr. Chair, and whoever you'd like to bring up with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Vice Chair, I appreciate you putting me first. As you may have heard, we have the most bills of any committee in the Environment and Transportation Committee. But I've been taught by Chair Atterbury, that it's quality and not quantity. And so I bring before you today a bill of great quality that I hope you will consider, the Open Source Phonics Matching Grant Program Act, HB 475. The bill would create a state matching grant program administered by the Maryland Department of Education to support organizations who provide free open source phonics materials that adults can use to teach and tutor children. This is a tool that can be used to improve reading both in and out of the classroom, and support for phonics and providing supplemental instruction outside of the classroom. First of all, I think it's in line with everybody's goal of trying to get our kids on a good reading track, especially given some of the learning deficits that we've experienced as a society over the past few years. But it's also consistent with the Maryland State Department of Education's recently stated policy goals. At the January 11th State Board of Education meeting, the board approved a resolution to implement science of reading programs, emphasizing the importance of phonological awareness and supplemental instruction. And again, this is to basically create a tool that will allow people to get open source material, so without paying expensive licensing or marketing fees, that we can help kids in tutoring programs, kids at home, and then even teachers in a classroom could potentially use these tools. There is a fiscal note related to the mandated appropriation of the bill. I know that has to be worked through given our current environment, but I hope the committee and subcommittee will give it consideration. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair. Go ahead. It's on. Okay. It's on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. I am Katie Spurlock and the founder of Open Source Phonics. Like other reading advocates in Maryland, I am thrilled to see the State Board's resolution on the science of reading. It focuses on the key components of getting reading right, and one of those components is family and community engagement, and HB 475 will help with that. As background, in the balanced literacy years, parents were misinformed about phonics. Even those of us with struggling readers were told that children will pick up phonics implicitly when exposed to print. Community engagement sessions are now needed to correct this and to explain what explicit instruction in phonics is all about. But a description won't be enough. Family needs access to tools so that they can see, understand, and practice phonics at home if they wish. With the science of reading shift, more Maryland kids should be reading by third grade soon, but we know that all kids are different. Just as some kids need more practice before mastering the multiplication facts, some kids need more practice with phonics before reading fluently. The cost of commercial intervention materials, often upwards of $200 a set, is a barrier for getting that practice. Parents who can afford to hire their own tutors or buy their own materials may do so, but parents without means are left out. HB 475 will attract nonprofits to serve this need. New materials can target particular needs, such as the needs of multilingual learners. Open license tools are the most cost-effective way of doing this because they can be adapted and updated. Phonics tools are simply too important to be scarce. Please act on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is one witness that is virtual, Mr. Johns, for 2 minutes, please. You're on mute.
Apologies. I'm back on? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Byron Johns. I am an education chair and the lead for the NAACP Montgomery County's Parents Council. I am also co-founder of the Black and Brown Coalition for Educational Equity and Excellence. Early literacy for students of color is critically important for educational equity. The Black and Brown Coalition and the Parents Council have focused advocacy on early literacy as one of our top priorities. In MCPS, our largest school district in the state, 2 out of 3 Black and 3 out of 4 brown children do not read and are not kindergarten ready when they start school. By middle school years, 6 years later, 1 out of 2 and 3 out of 4 brown students still do not meet the state literacy proficiency standards. Maryland ranks 40th in the United States in reading, with just 30% of 4th grade students and 33% of 8th grade students at or above proficiency levels. With so many children not starting with or gaining proficiency in reading, it is more critical than ever that resource investments and effective methods based on the science of reading immediately be one of Maryland's school districts' highest priorities. Solutions that address the scale of the deficiency include aligning our teacher preparation standards to the science of reading, and 2, empowering parents and caregivers with tools and materials that enable them to support developmental reading skills. We support passage of HB 475, which will promote development and deployment of tools and materials aligned to the science of reading. Thank you.
Thank you. And questions from the committee, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair, for bringing this bill. It's absolutely amazing. With how do you see the codes and the access being available for families? Because obviously, if you want to start at a younger age, I noticed some from the library information. Is that going to be put out through MSDE, infants and toddlers? Like, where would families know to get access to the program?
Sure. So I think it will depend on what the grant applicant is presenting to MSDE, and then MSDE will be able to decide sort of what the best vehicle forward is. I could also see, you'd want a MSDE sort of landing page, could be a centralized resource. You could specify that in the bill via an amendment. I heard Republicans are getting amendments left and right these days based on the House floor today. But yeah, so there could be a landing site there, but it's really probably going to depend on the grant recipient and what their particular program and program design is.
Okay, and then also you see it being available for homeschool families and that aspect as well?
Yeah, so while it could certainly be used by classroom teachers, generally speaking, this would be outside the classroom. That could be a homeschooling family. That could be someone who's just trying to support their child. That could be a neighborhood tutoring program. It would just be available. So it's not, it's not the grant recipients that, those people have to be qualified and we have to put out, qualified materials, but the people who are using the materials, that really would not be screened.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's go back up to all those bills. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 475. House Bill 634, Delegate Smith. Welcome to your old stomping grounds.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair, distinguished members of Ways and Means. Used to sit over there. So great to see everyone today. I'm excited to present to you House Bill 634. And for the record, I'm Delegate Stephanie Smith. And so this is concerning one of this committee's favorite topics, the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center. And so this is enabling legislation that will allow the Maryland Longitudinal Data Systems Governing Board the ability to participate in the United States Census Bureau's Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes Project, also known as PSEO. Currently, 27 other states have taken advantage of this free service provided by the U.S. Census Bureau for some or all of their segments of higher education. PSEO data provides disidentified, and I want to say this in italics and all caps, disidentified earnings and employment outcomes for college and university graduates by degree level, degree major, and post-secondary institution. This is accomplished by matching university transcript data with a national database of jobs. The Maryland Longitudinal Data System can track students that reside in Maryland, but once they leave our borders, we can no longer determine their earnings or industry sector. Participating in the PSEO project will allow institutions, students, prospective students, and parents to view graduate earnings by major, 1, 5, and 10 years post-graduation. In addition, they will be able to see the industries that graduates of programs ultimately find employment in. Without this legislation, the MLDS is unable to participate in the PSEO project because current statute prohibits them from sharing data with any entity other than the state comptroller. Even if this bill passes, it will still be up to the MLDS governing board to decide whether to participate in the PSEO project. This bill is supported by the University System of Maryland, the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and the Maryland Independent College and University Association. I thank you for your time today and encourage a favorable report to empower the MLDS governing board to pursue this free value-added service provided by the U.S. Census Bureau that many of you may know is headquartered in lovely Prince George's County, Maryland. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'm Matt Power, the President of Maryland Independent College and University Association. I think the sponsor of the bill has covered this incredibly well. The best thing I can encourage you to do to vote for this bill is to look at our testimony and play with the tool itself that shows you how other states are utilizing this information in ways that help students, parents, and policymakers figure out by major where students land, what industries they go into, what their career earnings look like years out, and how different and varied the different types of majors that we provide in our institutions, where they go geographically and where they go in their careers, the types of industries they work in. Liberal arts students that we have wind up in tech industries. They wind up in all different kinds of industries that we wouldn't know about. And we know that they do in Maryland, but we would love to see where they do it throughout the rest of the country. So with that, I encourage you to look at the tool and pass this wonderful piece of enabling legislation that allows the MLDS to participate in this free service of the United States Census Bureau. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 634, House Bill 795, Delegate Bandari.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Harry Bandari, presenting House Bill 795. This is the bill I presented last year too. The Peace and Conflict Studies Education Act. And this is a very personal, this bill is very personal to me as well. As I sat down to pen this bill, my heart was very heavy with sorrow and regret. The tragic loss of a young life that occurred at my school where I teach is something that I will never forget. That's how this bill came in existence. And the bill purpose, what is the objective of the bill? The purpose is to implement conflict resolution, education within a school to avert future violence and foster a peaceful and harmonious community environment. If there is no peace inside our student or on anybody, you can't create a peace outside. So as a teacher, lifelong teacher, I've seen the issues there. No matter what type of curriculum we offer, you know, if our children don't have the tool how to resolve the conflict, they can't do. I know even in the adult world, we got our own issues, but we know how to resolve the conflict. But our children should be given that tool to make sure that they resolve the conflict. And this bill highlight the mandate for the State Department of Education to develop a content standard for high school peace and conflict studies course. And the folks are surprised that we don't have one in our state. And when I introduced this bill, got the national attention, and this ensure a broad and effective approach to peace education. And if it is not like the If it is not possible to mandate whole state, we can do a pilot study in a couple of jurisdictions and let's see how it works. And it outlined the diverse topic covered by curriculum, like including cybersecurity, environmental justice, and more, aiming to equip students with a thorough understanding of conflict and peace. And this bill also require mediator. The bill stressed the importance of employing mediators in public high school, if possible, even in middle school, to provide education and support in conflict resolution and peaceful communication, highlighting the bill's practical support framework. And as we know that the benefits of this bill, like it will enhance conflict resolution skill, even though when they graduate, they have to have that skill, increase empathy, reduce violence, better academic performance, and valuable life skill development. That's what our children are lacking. And also this bill asks to have the service requirement. Currently, we do have at least like 75 service learning hours. And this bill requires for student to complete at least 8 hours of service related conflict resolution training, emphasizing like more like experiential type of the learning, real thing, right? And we are so glad that we are pushing Blueprint for Maryland Future. In the policy area 4, we advocate for more resources for students who need them, right? And I think this bill actually helped to implement that initiative as well. So in conclusion, as being a teacher, a lifelong teacher, I call upon the Ways and Means Committee to support this bill. The Peace and Conflict Studies Education Act is a vital step towards cultivating a culture of peace and understanding in our school and communities. This legislation embodies our collective aspiration to transform the legacy of tragedy into a future of constructive dialogue and resolution. By integrating peace and conflict studies in our educational framework, funded through targeted initiatives like the concentration of poverty grant and enhanced wraparound services, we invest in the well-being and potential of every student. Let this bill be our commitment to a future where every young person is equipped with the knowledge and skill to resolve the conflict peacefully, fostering a safer, more inclusive society. I urge you to join me in turning this vision into reality, honoring our responsibility to our children and our community with action that speaks louder than words. And thank you for your consideration and support, and I urge your favorable report on this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Delegate Bandari.
Thank you, Madam.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 795. I do not see the presenter for House Bill 821 or 838 or 620 or 730. So Delegate Wu, can we skip to you? And we're going to call House Bill 837. Delegate Johnson, come up. I didn't see you there. House Bill 620. Thank you, Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Delegate Wu, for letting me go. I appreciate that. This committee is very good at that. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, or Vice Chair, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Steve Johnson, here to present House Bill 620, Education, Sex Abuse, and Assault Awareness and Prevention Program, Human and Sex Trafficking. This bill's been before this committee before, so I'm going to be brief with this bill. Last year, this was unanimously voted out of the committee and was unanimously voted on the floor, passed on the floor. So it got hung up over in the Senate side. This bill requires that the State Board of Education and other non-public schools incorporate education and programs on the awareness and prevention of human trafficking and sex trafficking. This is to be taught by teachers trained providing instructions on the awareness of prevention, human trafficking, sex trafficking, and grooming, and to be incorporated into the existing health curriculum for students in grades 6 through 8. A lot of states have tried to implement a program for human trafficking education, but they tried to set up a whole different program and hire different teachers, and some even expanded into housing and healthcare for folks that were trafficked. And it was so expensive that that program failed. So I tried to start looking at ways that we could do it in Maryland with our existing resources. I talked to directors of curriculum, asked them if we could incorporate this into the health class. And they said that would be not a problem to do that. It is already in state standards, so we're not asking them, we're not interfering and dictating curriculum to them. So I sent you all, I think you all have a heat map that I passed out for human trafficking in the United States. You can see that Maryland is glowing red hot because of 95, our bus stops, our truck stops, our airports, our port of Baltimore. So many ways to have someone out of this country in a very short amount of time. Human trafficking they have it rated as the #2 criminal activity in the world. They think it's #1, but they don't have a grip again yet. They don't have enough data on the human organ harvesting part of it. They're getting 200,000 for a kidney, by the way. So they call it now, there's a new name for that around the world. It's called wealth fare, for the wealthy people to be able to buy organs that they need on the black market. So with this, I would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 620.
Thank you. And you do have there's someone signed up to testify favorable. Kashina Cross. Get her in a second. Hi, Ms. Cross, whenever you're ready for 2 minutes.
Is this the discussion on school lunches? Forgive me.
No, this is teaching human and sex trafficking prevention in schools.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I just state for the record that when we're on these calls, we're watching a blue screen Zoom. You've been notified, we'll let you in. And so when we come in, we don't really know what bill we're on, what discussion point, just for the record. But I am a member of the community that has supported international human trafficking programs. We model USA under Patricia Watts. And what we found is that human trafficking is something that is mostly understood, but it is the second growing largest crime in the state of Maryland. We talk about human trafficking, we're talking about work trafficking, sex trafficking, anything that causes a human to be against their will made to do something. It is a critical need right now for us to take notice that not only that, but our children with as much technology is unfortunately finding themselves being pulled into that world of being trafficked, and they don't even know that that's what's happening. Passports, when you are being restrained and you cannot leave or move from an environment safely, securely, trafficking. So there's more to human trafficking, and the word needs to get out on the numbers to call for safety and security, the same as we do for mental health and wellness. Add to the bill, I'm favorable for it, that we need to include mental health and wellness for those that have been trafficked, and programming that allows those that have become victors, not just the victim. No longer, we are victors, to actually tell their story, because the more the word gets out, the better it will be for those that will in the future be targeted. Silence is not our friend. Human traffickers depend on silence. And so I thank you for this bill. We are 100% behind it. And programs like We Model USA, Connect to Protect under Patricia Watts is a wonderful advocate for modeling, fashion. You can be pretty without having to sacrifice your values and your virtue. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And then I do echo that community partner, We Model USA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee or the delegate or Ms. Cross? One quick question, Delegate Johnson, is this in the same posture as we passed out of the House unanimously?
Yes, Madam Chair, exact same posture.
I want to thank you for bringing the bill. I think it's very, very important. We've had that conversation. So even though we do the right thing over here in the House, hopefully this session, the Senate will get it right. Thank you.
You guys always do your job. I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cross. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 620. I see Delegate Traveras, House Bill 838.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to be before you today on the Day of Love. So thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and your esteemed committee. I'm here to ask for a favorable report on HB 838 Family Child Care Home Expansion Grant Program. There should be a letter forthcoming from the delegation on this bill. This bill proposes a crucial allocation of $250,000 annually, with $50,000 dedicated to administrative costs and $200,000 to establishing a revolving fund. This fund is critical in supporting homeowners to make necessary repairs, upgrades, and renovations to comply with legal standards for in-home child care centers. In Prince George's County, there is a huge underground market for daycare providers within the immigrant community. Oftentimes, these providers do not prepare children for school with the socio-educational and psychological levels that they need, and these environments are not up to code. As such, this bill would target identifying these individuals, train them appropriately to train the children to be school ready, and legalize these businesses and bring them up to code so that the children can be in safe environments. So we mean to do this by providing microloans to daycare providers that will be paid back. The reliance on home-based childcare is significant, with 29.5% of infants and toddlers dependent on such arrangements. The child care sector, valued at $60.4 billion, is not just an economic pillar, but a foundation for family and community well-being. The necessity of this bill is underscored by the closure of 97,000 licensed family child care homes since 2005, reflecting a pressing need for supportive measures. By providing financial assistance for necessary home upgrades, this legislation will ensure safer, compliant childcare environments, benefiting providers, families, and the broader community. I urge you to consider the profound and far-reaching benefits of this bill. By supporting it, we're committing to the enhancement of child safety and development and addressing the growing need in our county and ensuring future stability of our child care sector. So in closing, I'm asking this esteemed committee for your favorable report on HB 838. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for the bill. Appreciate your passion for expanding childcare. One question, it looks like the grant program would be limited to childcare providers that are nonprofit in status. I'm curious, do you have any data about what the breakdown is about home-based childcare that's for-profit versus nonprofit? I always just assumed it was mostly the smaller providers were for-profit entities, not that they're making much profit, but.
Maybe that might be something that can be clarified, but the Prince George's Child Care Organization is a nonprofit entity that will be charged with being kind of like the fiscal sponsor of the management of working with the population that's doing the daycare. That is a for-profit business.
Okay, and that might have been my misread of the bill as I was quickly looking through it. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Delegate Traveras. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 838. Committee, please welcome the former Vice Chair, now Senator Washington. House Bill 821.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's just a privilege and an honor to be back in front of this amazing committee, the best committee in the House of Delegates. I am just honored and great to see you. Congratulations, Vice Chair Wilkins. First to see you at the mantle today. For the record, Senator Alonzo Washington here, weirdly to be here to introduce House Bill 821. But this is a local bill. Our local delegation has already passed, already supported it. They sent a letter over. Great bill, great sponsor. Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge your favorite report on this bill.
I see some things haven't changed. Any questions for Senator Washington? Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. That concludes the hearing. Good, great bill. On House Bill 821. House Bill 730, Delegate Conaway. I did see him. Ooh. Okay. House Bill 837, Delegate Wu. If you could please go back up to I know.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and the Ways and Means Committee members, the best committee in the House, right? For the record, I'm Delegate Chao, House District 9A. Today, I'm here to propose a bill, the More Opportunity for Care-Focused Student Act of 2024, HB 837, which is cross-filed with Senator Rose Papa with the bill number SB 33. In a world where the workforce is ever evolving, it is of vital importance and extremely crucial that the educational system equips students with the necessary skill set needed to excel in the job market. HB 837 seeks to bridge the gap between the traditional academic pursuits and the dynamic needs of the modern workforce. It mandates local school system to assist high school students in preparing for and gaining admission to registered apprenticeship program. This initiative is designed to treat vocational certificates, industry certification, and apprenticeship program as equivalent to post-secondary education, thereby expanding career opportunities for all students. Last summer, I served on the 2030 Apprenticeship Commission. One key recommendation is that the Commission had put forward to ensure that the primary outcome for high school graduates to be on structured career pathway at the time of graduation, regardless whether they plan to attend college or not. Several features of the bill: by integrating apprenticeship program into high school education, students gain early exposure to practice skills and career pathways, enhancing their readiness for the workforce. Recognizing apprenticeship alongside traditional college education validates diverse learning styles and career interests, promoting inclusivity. The focus on apprenticeship ensures that education is closely aligned with the evolving needs of the industry, creating a skilled and adaptive workforce. Besides, there are two key advantages. First, there's no physical impact. A critical aspect is neutral physical impact on state government. This bill necessitates no additional state funding, since its scope is limited to local school board. While there will be some cost for local government as LEA to implement the bill, it's important to consider the significant elevation of labor workforce shortage and the preparation for high school kids and the benefit to the local businesses. By making reasonable inputs in the existing resources, this bill can achieve significant educational outcome, showcasing fiscal responsibility with strategic resource management. Alignment with the blueprint for Maryland's future. HB 837 is not an isolated initiative, but a strategic component of a broader educational reform outlined in the blueprint for Maryland's future. The blueprint emphasizes the importance of career and technical education, and the apprenticeship as the essential element of Maryland's educational landscape. By formalizing the role of apprenticeship program, HB 837 directly supports the blueprint's goal, offering a practical solution to expand the career pathways and address skill shortage in high-demand occupations. Therefore, I urge the committee to provide a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have someone signed up favorable, Ms. Cross, and this is on House Bill 837, Opportunities for Career-Focused Students.
Thank you so much. House Bill 837, Career Focused Students. I am favorable for this House bill. I thank you for bringing it forward. We have always known that everyone won't be a doctor or a lawyer, but everyone has a part to play in a functioning, successful community. We are grateful for the vocational schools that will be put in place, and we are re-energizing the workforce, and we are also looking at one fair wage for blue-collar workers. We urge the committee to also add one fair wage as a requirement, particularly for those jobs where we have a persistent consistency of lower income households who are participating in those particular jobs, one fair wage. We are grateful for vocational school training because it is an opportunity to start earning money, and that money is not cheap money. It really is money that affords a family to pull themselves off of the system, off of financial literacy. Training should also be included so that they can pull themselves out of, housing assistance programs. When you talk about vocational schools, there's success that comes with the hope of having a degree, a certification that proves you can do it. You have the wherewithal to be successful, which also paves the blueprint for higher educational degrees. I am grateful for House Bill 837, and I highly favor and recommend that the committees will take action and afford the governor the opportunity to support this bill with the financial requirement, because even in a certification program, C++, for example, can cost you upwards of $1,000. So put the programming in place, but also put the funding in place that does not stress and strain the blue collar family that will be benefiting from the program. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on House Bill 837.
Thank you, Ms. Cross. Committee, are there any questions for Delegate Wu or Ms. Cross? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 837, House Bill 730, Delegate Conaway. Welcome to Ways and Means, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Frank Conaway Jr., and I'm here to present House Bill 730. I think I presented this bill in a different form 2 or 3 years previously, and you should have received an amendment to the bill, and the amendment is dealing basically with the fiscal note with the bill that is written. My intention every time I put the bill in was to teach the collateral consequences of a criminal conviction to members of our society who are in middle school and going to high school. I failed to understand that it would be creating a brand new course, but with the amendment, we could strike out the $900,000 cost and include this teaching into the regular curriculum, such as civics and social studies. I don't have a fiscal note on that, but I think it might be free. I think I also sent you something from the Black History Moment from 2024, February 8th, but I don't think it really applies to just Black history anymore. I think it applies to all of us. Governor Odin Bowie said, Governor of Maryland, he said they ought to be given the education that would prevent them from being misled by crafts and clamors of designing and unscrupulous politicians. What I'm talking about is before we hold people accountable, I think we need to tell people what they're going to be accountable for. So my new motto, I think for my upcoming election, is going to be educate before rehabilitate. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I appreciate you bringing this back. I am very interested in the idea, so I appreciate it, Delegate Conway.
Thank you very much, and I would be asking for a favor.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill. Oh, there's a virtual witness. I'm sorry, don't go anywhere yet. Ms. Cross, yes. This is on House Bill 730, course on collateral consequence of criminal conviction.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Conway. This is Kashina Cross speaking on House Bill 730. We are in favor, and thank you kindly for considering the fact that education is our first line of defense when it comes down to our middle school students. Many of our students are not receiving the scared straight process that we received growing up, Delegate Conway. And I remember Kiss Me, I Don't Smoke, The Frog. Everyone had to have a plan and a strategy on how they were going to avoid smoking when I was in kindergarten. And also the police ride-alongs that had you stay one night over in the prison cell so that you can understand what it felt like to be in lockup. Those are things that have become a softer America, and we haven't actually trained our students on the impact of their actions. With the rise in technology and the rise in gaming like Call of Duty and all the others that glorify murder and successful kills, we need to also incorporate the educational training that many of us grew up with, that I told you, so now it is on you to make the right choices. We cannot expect children to make the right choices when they haven't been given the option to choose. So I thank you for this bill in support of House Bill 730. We are grateful for the leap forward in education, because if my children can be trained on the body parts and how to curse properly so that they don't get kicked out of school, perhaps this is an addition that will also help curb the criminal violence that is happening in our communities since the summer of 2022. We are grateful for the work that you're doing on this committee, and we urge for a favorable injection or at least a test bed trial to see if we can curb the violence that is unfortunately taking root in the disenfranchisement of our youth. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Now, committee, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 730. Delegate Guyton, House Bill 662.
Happy Valentine's Day, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Delegate Michelle Guyton, District 42B, still in Baltimore County. And I am here to ask for your consideration and favorable report on House Bill 662. This bill helps to build the child care workforce and improve access to child care for Maryland families who are desperately struggling for that, as you all well know. So currently, the problem is that there are well-trained students who are graduating from our CTE programs and from dual enrollment programs in community colleges who would otherwise be qualified to become lead teachers as soon as they leave school, except they're not old enough. They have to be 19 instead of 18. So HB 662 sets the minimum age for a child care lead teacher at 18 rather than 19, and all other requirements for licensing and certification remain the same. I do want to point out that that this bill, along with several others that you'll hear in this committee this year, was a group effort. This is part of our ongoing work with the Women Legislators of Maryland Subcommittee on accessible, high-quality childcare. And I want to thank our president, Delegate Patterson, for being here and for her support on all of our work, and also mentioned that Delegate Feldmark and Delegate Plokovich-Carr have also been included in a lot of our conversations and have bills of their own. So with that, I will respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 662, a very simple, no cost, and actually it should improve our economy. So pro cost option to increase capacity, which is one of our biggest challenges in early child care for Maryland families. Thank you. And I do have someone on my panel who's.
Yeah, Ms.
Yes.
Push, and then there is Riley Shoebridge virtually. Go ahead.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton and co-sponsors for your support of childcare, children, and families. And thanks to the Ways and Means Committee, esteemed Chair and Vice Chair, for this opportunity to passionately testify in favor of the HB 662. I'm Christina Push, the Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association and Co-Chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council. House Bill 662 simply establishes a minimum age of 18 years old for childcare teachers in centers. This age change will not change or alter the numerous additional required staff qualifications for childcare teachers in centers. However, the bill will have a significant impact and a positive one by expanding opportunities for the workforce in early childhood while also supporting steps to address the critical workforce shortages. The childcare industry continues to struggle with critical workforce shortages, and the pandemic recovery has lagged behind other businesses. Childcare programs state recruiting and retaining a qualified workforce is one of their biggest challenges. According to Indeed, the demand for childcare workers remain high. In September of 2023, childcare job postings on Indeed were still more than 50% above their pre-pandemic levels. HB 662, which embraces COMAR qualifications, will also increase the ability for providers to deliver quality care and education to more families. It mitigates the impact of teacher shortages by widening the candidate pool and eliminate the need for a gap year after graduating high school, and encourage more young individuals to enter childcare workforce with better compensation opportunities from high school graduation or while attending college. Just to make a quick comparison, in family childcare regulations, they're already established a minimum age of 18 for licensed family childcare who work alone to care for and educate 8 children of mixed age groups, including infants and preschoolers, which is not allowed in centers, requiring no experience and less training hours than childcare teachers in centers. So House Bill 662 exceeds staff qualifications for center teachers and establishes the same minimum age. So we ask for a favorable report because a year can make a big difference to these high school graduates or college students who need to earn a paycheck and give them a start in life. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one person signed up to testify virtually, Riley Shoebridge. For 2 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Riley Shoebridge, and I'm here on behalf of KinderCare Learning Companies in support of House Bill 662. KinderCare operates 35 childcare centers and 16 before and after school programs throughout Maryland, serving a little over 4,700 children and employing over 900 individuals. House Bill 662 will help alleviate childcare workforce shortages, which further support the overall economy throughout the state. Altering the minimum age requirement from 19 to 18 will allow childcare centers to recruit and employ individuals graduating high school at a critical transitional period in their lives. As the state continues to consider ways to expedite the blueprint for Maryland's future and expand access and affordability to care, supporting the childcare workforce with recruiting new ECE professionals is an essential piece to this puzzle. With adequate workforce support to sustain our centers, we can continue the path forward, reaching all of Maryland's youngest children in every corner of the state and help alleviate other industries' labor shortages, which are often compounded by a lack of childcare. KinderCare respectfully requests your support on House Bill 662.
Any questions from the committee? Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for the bill. I just was curious, I guess, why was the age 19? Why was that? It was an arbitrary age, or
We don't know. We don't
Okay,
know.
Got it. Okay.
That would be an MST question.
Okay. And then, like some 18-year-olds are still in high school, so I don't know how this would impact if they are still like a full-time student.
Sure. So this is really only going to be for those, and you could speak to this as well, Chris, I'm sorry.
No.
For those who have graduated and graduated with the appropriate certification to go into this field, and yet they have to take a gap year or a gap months or however long until they actually turn 19 before they can actually join that workforce in the way that they are already qualified to do. So it really wouldn't apply to kids who are, 17 or,
Okay.
In school still.
Thank you.
And that's appropriate.
Any other questions? Yeah, Delegate Ebersol.
Thanks. Just make sure I understand, because I'm not looking at the bill now, I'm sorry. Did you say that if they were still in high school, they wouldn't be eligible? Does the bill say that?
If they haven't graduated with one of these certifications, like the CTE program requirements and the 90-hour certification, or through dual enrollment, then they would not meet the requirements also under COMAR for lead teachers.
And I can just
Yes.
parlay or piggyback. When we say it doesn't alter the staff qualifications already in COMAR, it's required to have a high school diploma.
Right, okay.
So
They would have to graduate.
we're not altering those at all.
Touchdown, thank you.
Thank you for that touchdown.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 662, House Bill 746, Delegate Miller. And while she's walking up committee, I'd like to thank Trooper Rachel for the cookies that she brought for us in the kitchen. Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and my amazing colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate April Miller, and I am here to ask for your favorable report on House Bill 746. Through the Maryland Blueprint for Education, we are investing in an unprecedented amount of funding to transform our educational system. By 2029, the state share alone will be over $4 billion. We are creating new partnerships, including public-private models, community schools, school-based health centers, increased grant funding for concentrations of poverty, MOUs with workforce development and colleges, and partnering with the community in ways that have not been done on such a large scale before. We have complicated weighted formulas of funding that will now follow the child. My question is, who is following the money? How do we assure the public that we are being fiscally responsible and transparent with this historic investment in our future? House Bill 746 will give the independence and authority needed for the Maryland Office of the Inspector General for Education to provide the needed oversight of the county boards of education, local public school systems, non-public schools that receive state funds, MSTE, and the IAC. It also defines the OIGE as a state educational authority under FERPA and authorizes the OIGE to audit and evaluate state or federally supported elementary and secondary education programs and services. The bill provides for support to the OIGE to effectively conduct the work of the office and the necessary office space to perform its independent role. House Bill 746 also heightens the awareness of fraud, waste, and abuse of education resources reporting by mandating posting of reporting methods and establishing an online direct link to the OIGE for reporting purposes. I would now like to turn this over to Inspector General Richard Henry to provide you with more information on House Bill 746.
Thank you, Delegate Miller. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and honorable committee members. As Delegate Miller mentioned, I am Richard Henry and serve as Maryland's Inspector General for Education. I am before you today to ask for your support on House Bill 746. The bill is designated to rectify the administrative limitations identified after its enactment in 2019. It is a crucial step towards aligning my office's operations with the highest standards of integrity, efficiency, and best practices that govern leading Inspector General offices across the country. In addition to the administrative changes, the bill provides local school systems, boards of education, and the department with an alternative and improved mechanism to report education fraud, waste, and abuse, and financial mismanagement directly and anonymously to the Office of the Inspector General. By mandating the placement of information or informative posters within school premises, we are not just promoting transparency, but actively encouraging a culture of accountability. Although these changes are administrative in nature, the authority to enact these changes lies solely on this esteemed committee. I respectfully request this committee render a favorable report on this bill. At this time, I am prepared to answer any questions or clarify any concerns you might have. Just so the committee is aware, I also have today with me Deputy Inspector General Yvonne Brooks, an Assistant Attorney General and General Counsel to the Office of the Inspector General, Brandis Marsh. Mr. Marsh can be available to answer any of your technical questions in regards to legality, and Ms. Brooks and myself can answer any other questions about the bill.
Thank you. We do have someone signed up virtually, Ms. Cross. And this is the legislation, House Bill 746, related to the Office of the Inspector General.
Thank you. Favorable for House Bill 746 in relation to the Office of Inspector General in Education. The trust and transparency of our communities is a critical attribute in a successful building community. It guarantees that schools and school officials will have the resources that are required to effectively train tomorrow's futures. I am in support of this bill because I am clearly in support of a balanced government, in support of checks and balances where money is a resolve. We must ensure that the computer systems as well as databases that support this process will help make this seamless transition. And that's something that I will add in addition to this bill to make sure that there are virtual systems in place, databases that are updated to ensure that the program and the funds are properly accounted, that takes out some of the human equation such that it wouldn't cause an issue. I am totally in favor of the term limits that have been implied by this bill, because I do believe that there is an opportunity for those volunteers in community. We must reinvigorate the volunteer spirit of service in our communities. Amongst our financial institutions, financial literacy is the most prized possession that we have following COVID-19 and the massive impact that it had on families' budgets. When it comes down to the educational departments, it is no different, because for 3 years, things didn't get done because the nation was shut down, from roofs needing to be repaired to buildings falling apart because we all were not there, and a house not lived in will crumble. So thank you so much for this bill. I am in support, and I urge the committee to continue to support accountability in government.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Miracle North.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. Just from my understanding on the role of Inspector General, I know in Montgomery County, where I represent, we had Inspector General look into sexual harassment claims of a consumer attendant. Would I, just out of curiosity, would you be open to considering those types of claims for your role on Inspector General at the state level, or is it just limited to use of financial stuff, fraud, misuse, and?
In the case that you're referencing, we actually initially started the investigation into that matter.
Okay.
So that does fall under our authority.
Okay.
So we, because of something that occurred, we felt it best to render the assistance of the Montgomery County Inspector General to have a true independent review, because we felt as though our interaction caused our report, we would have been tainted.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions? Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Miller, for the bill. As committee will hear, I'm about to present a bill also on audit, so I appreciate the oversight. I guess this question's for the Inspector General. So I'm just wondering if you can just walk us through a little bit, given that school districts already are subject to requirements under state law for annual audits, MSTE does evaluations of particular programs, OLA does periodic audits. How would you be looking at your office's role given the underlying requirements? Would it be if there's specific problems raised for a particular program, or just if you could just add some details about how you think this would fit in with everything else?
Certainly. Our office is complaint-based, so we don't create a schedule to actually conduct the audits, such as the Office of Legislative Audits. If you recall, and I think in your bill that probably would be following us in Bill 730 or 760, we look at not only the complaint, but we look at the work that the Office of Legislative Audits conducted, prior to our investigation. So we're also looking for those repeat findings that were not acted upon, and if they caused any further issues. So when it comes to our audits, we're actually conduct investigative audits, and that complements our investigation because they're complaint driven. So we're not independently going out and saying, oh, this looks like something good today, or as someone might say, you're witch hunting. I don't do that. And that's not what the purpose of this office is for.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 746, House Bill 760, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 760. First off, please take a look at the sponsor amendment that I've submitted to the committee. It completely rewrites this very short bill. So colleagues, in addition to serving on this committee, I also serve on the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee, and this bill is an outgrowth of that committee's work from over the interim. For those who aren't familiar, the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee provides oversight of state agencies by reviewing audits conducted by the Office of Legislative Audits. OLA is part of our Department of Legislative Services and is charged in state law with reviewing financial management practices for state agencies and certain recipients of state funding. I realize that audits may sound boring, but they are an essential part of good government and ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used appropriately and efficiently. For the context of this bill, you should know that OLA performs an audit of each of the 24 public school districts every 6 years, unless a waiver is granted. In the most recent round of audits, OLA identified 171 repeat audit findings for school districts. In plain English, that means that there were 171 problems flagged by OLA that were not fixed by 6 years later, or in some cases, 12 years later. So they were still a problem when the next audit occurred. So this was 171 instances of where taxpayer dollars could have been used better. These repeat audit findings cover a broad array of categories. Some examples from the audits completed in just the past 2 years include award of a $900,000 contract without using a competitive procurement process, inadequate protections around user access to human resources and payroll systems, use of district funds to purchase gift cards, and lack of oversight on employee and retiree healthcare claims. Notably, every one of the 24 school districts had at least one repeat audit finding, and at the worst end of the spectrum, there were 5 districts with more than 10 repeat findings. These repeat findings for districts are higher, the 171 repeat findings for school districts are higher than the collective number of repeat findings for all state agencies combined. So there's a major need to address this problem. OLA recommended in its 2023 audit of MSDE that the agency should monitor and verify the corrective actions taken by school districts in response to the OLA audit findings. MSDE and OLA, however, are in disagreement on this point and have been going through several rounds of exchanging paperwork and competing citations of state law as to who should ultimately be responsible. But I would say despite that disagreement, both parties agree that there should be more transparency by local school systems about the actions they are taking to address repeat audit findings. So under my sponsor amendment, each school district would be required to report mid-audit cycle about what they are doing to address any prior repeat audit findings identified by OLA. And there is already at least one school district that is publicly reporting this information. Prince George's County Public Schools has been publicly reporting on their website since 2019 on their progress in fixing the OLA audit findings for their district. So this bill would ensure that other districts are transparent about their progress or lack thereof and will improve accountability for school district financial management practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Delegate Polakovich-Carr? Delegate Wu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate Polakovich-Carr. So I was sitting on the audit committee for 4 years on the school board. I think one question is about what can prepare the school board to do something, because in general, the school board will do something, the superintendent may have a different opinion. Eventually, what's the mechanism to hold them accountable?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. The Office of Legislative Audits is recommending that the Department of Education hold the districts accountable. MSDE says, no, that's OLA's job. So that's kind of where the fundamental disagreement is. Really, I brought the bill forward because I'm like, well, at least having public transparency about the progress is a good step forward. This is a low cost solution. And, districts would be required to report to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee, as well as post on their websites what progress they're making. So at least, that would be an opportunity for a board, or if there's a disagreement with the school system, to be able to, track that progress and to hold them accountable, hopefully.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. John Willems, please. And then we have one individual that is signed up favorable with amendment virtually.
Chair Atterbury, members of the committee, John Willems representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, here today in strong support of Delegate Polakovich-Carr's bill with her sponsor amendments to the bill. Want to share with the committee our appreciation for the sponsors working with us to address what we recognize as a need for a greater, certainly interim transparency and accountability, for the responsiveness to repeat findings in the Office of Legislative Audits, audits of local school systems. 6 years is a long time. These are lengthy and arduous audits, to be clear. So there is a burden imposed on school systems to undertake these audits. These were audits initiated following the passage of the prior version of the blueprint, the Bridge to Excellence. And so in exchange for quote unquote, all that additional state money, the legislature said we want some additional eyes on fiscal accountability of the school systems, and we appreciate that. We do believe that the interim reports will be valuable, and we also appreciate that the amendments address the need for the publication of the reports, the public-facing nature of these reports being in accordance with best practices. We've identified some concerns with even the public-facing summaries in the Office of Legislative Audits reports on school systems, particularly with regard to cybersecurity vulnerabilities. The language, even in 1 or 2 sentences, is pretty specific, and we believe altogether too revealing of what the cyber vulnerability of concern to the Office of Legislative Audits is, and that there should be a little more scrutiny applied to any public-facing reporting of that kind of finding. But again, MABE strongly supports the bill with the sponsors' amendments and requests a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Mary Pat Fannin, favorable with amendment virtually.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here in strong support of the House Bill 760, here to simply express our appreciation for the delegates' partnership and outreach on the bill. We are in strong support of openness and transparency. We take these audits very seriously, and again, appreciate the delegates' amendments, especially as they relate to any potential cybersecurity issues that may need to be redacted. But we look forward to working with her and the departments moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I probably should have asked the sponsor this. Can you just tell me how the bill's been changed by the amendment? I can't quite find it in front of me yet. Just, in an elevator speech, tell me what the C changes are here.
So the amendments would provide that on or before November 1st of the 3rd year of the 6-year audit cycle, so 3 years following the most recent audit with regard to the implementation of corrective actions to address repeat findings and recommendations, the school system would be required to publish a report, a status report in essence, in terms of efforts to address those repeat findings identified in the OLA report. And then the amendment would further specify that publishing be in accordance with, in a manner consistent with auditing best practices.
Okay, thanks. And I just had the amendment placed on my desk, so I'll take a look at it immediately.
Delegate Hornberger.
Waiting on the mic. There we go. Okay, so I've got the report up here. I'm just breezing through it. 2 questions, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot. It does it by jurisdiction, but it doesn't outline the specifics of the findings. Are those available some other place?
So delegate, each report, the most recent one of January 2024 is for Cecil County. These are 40-page reports.
Okay, so this is a summary that I'm probably looking at.
Correct, yes. Okay. And so at the front of each of these reports is something that looks like a table summarizing the key findings. Okay. And that, for instance, is where we identified the concern with a statement related to cybersecurity. We found statements included in these summaries related to not taking advice of counsel related to a certain change in policy or procedure. That seems to be something of note for OLA to point out to the school system that maybe shouldn't be in the public facing
Yep. And then
document.
the second question, if I may, it has an asterisk here and talks about this exemption for extending the time of the audit. It looks like only a few jurisdictions have taken advantage of that. Does that mean that it's only going to take place once in 12 years? I know the bill is changing this audit window time. So what would it look like after the passage of the bill?
I don't believe this bill changes the timeline at all. That exemption was sought and secured with respect to, for some of our smaller school systems, having to bring a relocatable, trailer in to house the Office of Legislative Audit staff and accommodate their 6 months of record requests. If in fact there are no negative or repeat findings and there are some qualifications there, then the time period can be extended between that audit and the next audit.
So what would be the maximum passage of time if the exemption was granted that a jurisdiction could go without an audit?
I am not 100% clear on that.
Because what I'm looking at here, it could be as many as 12 years. Doesn't sound reasonable.
I don't think that was the intent of the provision that extended the timeline originally, but I would have to check on that.
If everyone on the local side and the delegation agrees, they can get one waiver. So it could be 12 years, but the normal schedule is 6 years. The bill and the amendment don't change the 6 years.
Something for consideration. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 760. There you are, Delegate Adams, House Bill 825.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. For the record, Delegate Chris Adams, happy to present House Bill 825. We passed a bill last year. This is a cleanup from that bill titled Libraries, Regional Resource Centers Governing Board Membership. It's a departmental bill. It increases the maximum authorized number of public members from 1 to 2 on the governing board for each regional library resource center. The bill takes effect July 1st, 2024. I'd ask for the committee's favorable report of this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Tamar Sarnoff. I am the Director of the Public Libraries and State Networking Branch of the Maryland State Library Agency. I'm here on behalf of Irene Padilla, our State Librarian. It's my pleasure to join you today to testify in support of House Bill 825. This bill is an important step in our effort to ensure the governing boards of Maryland's 3 regional resource centers located in Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, and on the Eastern Shore best reflect the communities they serve. The bill would expand public representation on the regional resource center boards from 1 member to 2 members from each area served. Having 2 members of the public, in addition to 1 trustee from each county served, allows a regional resource center greater flexibility in recruiting board members that are aligned with the member library initiatives, such as development of equity, diversity, and inclusion plans, and other important efforts. This expansion will allow our regional resource center boards to bring in community leaders, attorneys, financial experts, fundraisers, advocates, and other allies. This change will broaden and elevate the regional library as an entity mindful of larger community issues like economic development, health, transportation, and public safety. These boards are self-appointing, and each has developed an application package that includes a formal interview questions and a process to vet all potential members, and to ensure they understand the organization's needs and responsibilities. Board members have no influence on collection development policies or collections, as Maryland's regional resource centers do not circulate materials. Therefore, board members have no jurisdiction over the freedom to read in county served. In short, House Bill 825 will bring these regional libraries into compliance with community-based principal governance structures that employ best practices for a nonprofit entity funded by taxpayers. Not only will it bring new and diverse perspectives to Maryland regional libraries, it will also provide these libraries with the expertise and experience They need to thrive in the 21st century. Thank you for your time and consideration of HB 825, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of this committee. My name is Ashley Teagle, and I'm the CEO of the Southern Maryland Regional Library Association, which we call SMRLA. And I support HB 825, which will allow SMRLA to recruit 2 members of the public from Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's County to join our board. Currently, we are limited to 1 member of the public. This proposed revision will expand the diversity of our board and allow for more equitable representation for the community served. Currently, we're actively recruiting for an additional member for Calvert and St. Mary's counties. The candidates that have submitted their applications to date have varied work, educational, and volunteer experience, which will help us create a more well-rounded board. Our board has also established a recruitment process with an application package to assist us with establishing recruitment benchmarks and identifying board members with skills such as policy development, personnel management, business management, and strategic planning experience, just to name a few. Our board also approved an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan at their December 2023 meeting. The board fully acknowledges the lack of diversity on our board and desires to change this. One way for us to diversify is to look outside of our public library partners' boards for potential members. We serve the residents of Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's counties, and there are benefits for our partner libraries due to the change in board composition as well. Our partner libraries will benefit from SMRLA having board members who represent the communities that we serve. Currently, our board completely lacks racial diversity. Secondly, the ability to recruit from members of the public will allow SMRLA greater flexibility in recruiting board members who can support SMRLA and our partner libraries' current initiatives. We could recruit board members with specific talents that will help us further our organizational mission and goals. Finally, the board becomes self-appointing. Currently, my public library partners are providing me with names of brand new board members. While we would retain 1 member from each county that is a public library trustee, the majority of board members would then be recruited from the public. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Patterson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Delegate Adams, for bringing this legislation to our attention. My question is really for Ms. Teagle from Southern Maryland. The challenge is always when you have 3 counties that are really sort of different. What mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that the concerns of the diverse communities are addressed?
Yeah, so that is actually what we're working towards. So new to our process will be to collect demographic information, which I actually have a data analyst that keeps track of census data. So as part of that benchmarking process, ideally, we'd be looking at the region as a whole, the diversity of the region, and seeing if we can establish reasonable benchmarks to increase the diversity on our board that way.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 825, House Bill 615, Delegate Ruth. Yeah.
Good afternoon and happy Valentine's Day, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm here presenting House Bill 615. Many of you have seen this bill before. It's passed the House twice and it's passed the Senate once. It passed the House and the Senate in 2022, but the Senate put an amendment on it and it was never quite able to be reconciled. So I hope that this will be the year we finally get it passed. First, before I talk about what House Bill 615 does, I want to talk about what it does not do, because there's some misunderstanding out there about this. This does not prevent children from being charged with a crime on school grounds at all. If children commit assault, subject to our other laws, they are still, if they break the law, they are able to be charged. If they commit assault, if they carry a gun to school, anything where they are able to be charged under other laws, they will still be able to be charged even if this passes. All this bill does is it prevents students from being charged with a crime for something that really shouldn't be a crime. Disrupting school activities. This is a antiquated law that was never intended to be used for this purpose that's in the education code. I don't think this type of thing should even be in the education code. The criminal code is there for criminal offenses. Education code is there to help children to succeed in school. So you'll hear from my panelists about cases where this happens, but a child can be charged with a crime, processed into the criminal justice system for things like acting up in class, things that they need to learn are not appropriate behavior. And there are avenues in the school systems for dealing with that. But the criminal justice system is not the place to deal with those types of behaviors and can actually be counterproductive, because there is plenty of evidence that children who are arrested are more likely to reoffend and less likely to graduate from high school. So we're not helping public safety. We're hurting public safety by arresting these children for this, and we are hurting their outcomes. It's also a completely unnecessary law. We have some data that you'll hear about from my panel, which shows that most of the cases where this is charged are also charged with other charges like misdemeanor assault. This charge is tacked on as an additional charge. Of the cases where this charge was charged alone, none of them in FY23 were petitioned. None of them were formally taken to the courts. So it just really shows that this is an unnecessary charge. But even if a child is arrested and it's determined that they're released, they're still going through the trauma of arrest, and they still have the long-term consequences of having that arrest. This charge disproportionately impacts children of color, and it disproportionately impacts children with disabilities. In FY23, 73% of the students arrested under this law were Black. That's 2.24 times the 32.7% of students who in Maryland schools who identify as Black. Because of implicit bias, people often perceive the behavior of Black children as more threatening compared to the same behavior conducted by white children of the same age. That same data shows 32.9%, one third of children charged with this particular offense are students with disabilities. Many are charged for things that are covered under their IEP, things that should be handled within the IEP process, and yet they're arrested for that. And again, my panel will talk more about that. So the ultimate goal of the education code should be student success and preparation for their future. The criminal charges in education, Section 26-101, run counter to that goal and do not belong in the education code. And it's time to clean that up and stop criminalizing typical student behavior. I ask for a favorable report for HB 615, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins. My name is Levi Bradford. I'm an education attorney with the Public Justice Center in our Education Stability Project. I'm here to give you the data, the statistical reality of how this charge is used. The disparities on race and disability status are alarming for the Disturbing Schools charge. Black children are 5.5 times more likely to be referred to the Department of Juvenile Services than white children for disturbing schools. And children with disabilities are 3.3 times more likely than children without disabilities to be referred for disturbing schools. The Disturbing Schools charge sits at a unique and concerning intersection of this data. In fiscal year 2022, it was the 4th most racially disparate juvenile offense. And in that same year, it was the 5th most common juvenile offense referred to DJS. Of those most common offenses, it is the #1 most racially disparate offense. The one other unique aspect of this charge, in fiscal year 23, as you heard Delegate Ruth reference, it was never once actually useful. It is what's known as a kitchen sink charge. It's almost exclusively charged alongside other more serious offenses. Last year, not a single referral where disturbing schools was the only charge was actually formally filed in the court. The charge that most frequently accompanies disturbing schools is, by a wide margin, misdemeanor assault, fights in schools. This is already a chargeable offense. If we remove the ability to charge a student with disturbing school at their own school, Prosecutors will not lose the ability to bring a case. The only thing they lose is the ability to leverage one charge against another in a game of pressuring children to accept deals. It's unacceptable for Maryland to continue criminalizing children for acting like children at school. The disturbing schools charge pushes Black children and children with disabilities further and further along the school to prison pipeline, and it harms our kids. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Logan Ewing. I'm an attorney with Disability Rights Maryland. DRM strongly supports House Bill 615 because it will prevent youth with disabilities from needlessly entering the school to prison pipeline. DRM has seen firsthand the injustice of this law and the deep harm it can cause students and families. We represented an 11-year-old sixth grade student who was charged and arrested with disturbing school activities for refusing to sit in her assigned seat. As our client mother explains in written testimony in support of this bill, which we encourage you to read, a teacher's request to sit in an assigned seat may seem simple, but our client has suffered from anxiety for years, and the school had a documented Section 504 plan indicating that if she is called out in front of others, she tends to shut down. When asked to move to her assigned seat, our client said nothing, froze, and did not move. The teacher then called for the assistant principal, who then called 911. When the police arrived, our client had complied and was walking to the front office as she's been directed. The police asked her why she wasn't listening, and she shrugged, saying, "I don't know." At this point, 3 male police officers handcuffed her, arrested her, and took her to the police station. She sat in a holding cell for nearly 3 hours while she was waiting for her mother to come get her. This incident, which DJS resolved without any further action, was needless, preventable, and traumatizing for our client and her whole family. Our client will live with this trauma for the rest of her life because the school wrongly decided that involving police was the best option, and the police were able to use the charge of disturbing school activities to criminalize an 11-year-old child's disability-related behavior, which is why supporting House Bill 615 is necessary. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alyssa Fio, and I'm an education attorney with the Maryland Office of the Public Defender. I'm here testifying in support of HB 615 on behalf of OPD and also on behalf of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. My colleague, Erin Seegers, is a line juvenile defender here in Anne Arundel County. She had intended to be here to testify and talk about all the cases that she has had and seen here in Anne Arundel County where kids have been charged under this provision. Unfortunately, Erin is in court and not able to be here. But I also wanted to tell you about what school systems can do instead of charging students, and it's a long list. Maryland school systems have specific procedures where they can utilize if a student is disturbing school that fall within their student code of conduct. They can do this without exposing students to the juvenile justice system, which we know can have dire collateral consequences on students. School systems can also refer students to a student support team that can develop a plan to support the student. For students who have more significant behavior problems, a school system can order what's called a functional behavior assessment. And what that assessment does is it gets at the root cause of why the student is engaging in that behavior, and they can develop a plan. School systems can also utilize a whole range of interventions and supports for students with disabilities through the IEP or 504 process. And just as a reminder, students with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by school-based arrests and in our juvenile justice system generally. Federal law under the IDEA requires school systems to provide behavior supports and interventions for students who do have disruptive behavior in school. MSD has long promoted and supported something called positive behavior supports and intervention, PBIS. Many schools implement a PBIS program, and it's evidence-based and is shown to be effective. Maryland's blueprint also recognizes the need for additional student. And we also have restorative practices. And I want to end with just relationships. Charging a student with this provision breaks any sense of trust that a student would have. I lastly want to just say this is not about avoiding accountability by students. It's actually asserting accountability by teachers and educators to implement what we know is evidence-based interventions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the bill sponsor So I wanted to, I don't know if they're gonna testify or not, but I was looking at MABE's, they're favorable with an amendment. And I just wanted to ask the sponsor or the panel. So there's basically a recommendation to strike the language on, the second page, lines 4 through 7. So basically exempting a student currently attending another institution of elementary, secondary, or higher education who is participating in or attending a sporting event or other extracurricular program sponsored by the institution. And I know Maeve, the last person speaking did talk a little bit more about some of the other policies around like prohibiting zero tolerance and other philosophies. I'm curious though, in response to that amendment, is there an alternative that a school could use that would still not, require a criminal penalty or misdemeanor penalty? If so, could you talk? I think you were kind of sharing that, but I know you had to get through.
Yeah.
So if you could maybe talk a little bit more about how that concern could be addressed through other mechanisms.
So schools specifically can use disturbing the public peace and disorderly conduct. And you'll see that charge right under disturbing schools operation. You see a disturbing the peace charge, which police can use, and schools being a public place, we don't need that other layer of charge.
Okay. So you're simply saying with the school in that situation, that would be the police department, that would be would that still be a criminal offense? Okay.
Exactly.
Got it. So it does not take away from if there's something that could be qualified as criminal, there still is a chance to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and also it's law enforcement that's doing all of these charges. And these are school resource officers that are in our schools. I also want to just note in our testimony from OPD, you'll see the disproportionality between counties. Montgomery County and Howard County, congratulations, you used it 0 times. Other school systems used it, account for 26% or 23%. And where my child goes to school should not increase the risk of my child being arrested for normal, typical, perhaps frustrating, irritating childhood behavior.
So basically, I know this is not the intent of the bill sponsor, because I know the bill sponsor well, but if there's a concern about being able to police children, there's still other ways we can police our children.
Absolutely, we do it every day.
Not that I'm encouraging that, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Delegate Roberts.
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
I did have a few questions. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Delegate, for bringing this important bill. In the numbers, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you're the only man up there.
I'm Levi Bradford.
The numbers that you gave out, DJS, the disproportionate numbers of children that were referred to DJS, how many, do you have stats on how many of those actually referred to DJS were referred to the state's attorney's offices?
I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers on if when they were charged with other charges, how many were referred to the state's attorney's office. I know that the one stat I do have is that when disturbing schools was the only charge on a referral, 0 of them were moved past DJS.
Okay, and then for the delegate, in previous years that you've introduced this bill, are there significant differences?
In 2022, thank you, Delegate, for the question. And in 2022, it passed the House and it passed the Senate. I'm so sorry. The Senate put one amendment on it. This bill has the Senate amendment on it. Other than that, it's the same.
Oh, okay, great. And then it was just another question for you. You mentioned that there were Montgomery County and Howard County didn't use those services.
Didn't use those charges.
Those charges. Can you name a couple, the ones that have the most?
Yes. Anne Arundel County, Wacomico.
Anne Arundel County accounted for 26% of the charges. Wacomico County accounted for 23%. Other counties like Baltimore County, Harford County, mostly every other county has some.
Okay.
And I'm happy to leave this with you on my way out.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to go over a few things in the, on the fiscal note and the bill summary. So one of the things that's been very concerning to me, and I know many teachers who are leaving the profession because of disruptive behavior and some of those that you might consider normal childhood behavior, something typical.
And some are related to disability.
Some are related to disability, and of course, I'm very sensitive to that. But in the effect, the stated effect, it does say the bill may have an operational effect on the ability of the state institutions of higher ed or local school systems to address disruptive behavior. And you mentioned some of the things that you can do and that should be being done and that should already be done, particularly if they have 504s or IEPs.
Right.
But however, when students are throwing chairs, do you know how many minutes of instructional time are being lost to disruptive
Right.
behavior? And like what schools or school systems can be done right then if we're taking this aspect away?
Right.
Like in the moment.
So I first want to say that I've been an education attorney for 30 years, working on the school to prison pipeline, school discipline, special ed, all that time in Pennsylvania and here. And what I can tell you is when a teacher has support and training and is supported both at the school level and district level, I have seen incredible changes in students' behavior. Students don't engage in behavior for no reason. It's called the function of the behavior. And mostly the function of behavior is students trying to communicate something, they're trying to avoid something, or they're trying to get attention. And I can tell you now, I've been with the Public Defender's Office for 1.5 years. I was at Disability Rights Maryland prior to that. Many of the students that I am seeing in the 1.5 years that I've been here has been astonishing in terms of literacy. Now you heard earlier about our literacy issue in the open, okay? And you've seen, I'm sure, Maryland's lower reading scores for 4th and 8th graders, okay? I have children that I am representing who are 17 years old who are reading on the 1st grade level. And they are walking the hall. And why are they walking the halls? And they've never been identified. They're walking the halls because they don't understand. They can't be in those classrooms, and no one has stopped to say what's going on with this child. So really, quite honestly, until the state provides teachers, and I'm from a family of educators, my father's a middle school principal in Philadelphia, until the state supports our teachers, makes classrooms not 30 and 35 classroom large, until that happens, there is going to be disruption in one way or another, because you also have young teachers who are not have the experience. But what this statute does is it puts it on the back of kids. It really does. And I see it every day. But when you train a teacher on how to implement a behavior plan and how to do positive behavior supports, it is amazing how it can change and how it can empower not only the child, but also the teacher.
Could I add to that, Madam Chair? So I would also add that when a child is arrested in class, that impacts not only that child, but the other children in the class. It creates shared, I am so sorry. It creates shared trauma, and that makes it more difficult for those other students to learn after that incident as well. I was going to say more, but I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then the other piece that I had was in the next part, it says, under the bill, the following provisions in current law do not apply to the students described above. And one is the willfully disturbed. But then another one, it says a person may not molest or threaten bodily harm to any student's administrator, employee, or at their home. So how does that play into it? Because I'm very concerned. One of the things I'm most proud of girls in this generation is they treat especially sexual crime, sexual harassment situations like that much differently than girls did at my age. And so I would hate for something to enable that to happen more often or not to be called. So those are some of the things. And then going along with that are some of the reporting categories of disruption, which is the attendance, the arson, having dangerous substances, the sex offenses, and attacks. So some of them are criminal, some of them might not reach to the level of criminal, but are we tying anyone's hands to be able to investigate or to look into those?
Right, and I would say that for every one of those things you listed, there is a separate criminal offense. So for, yeah.
Well, it's for sexual offenses, not, I mean, that can,
Well, right.
especially on college campuses. I mean, that's.
So threatening is, you can have there's an offense of that. Assault, for each of those things, it's a criminal action. The reality is, and from our perspective, is this provision, as it applies to children who attend that school, does nothing in terms of safety, in terms of this law enforcement being able to charge a child with some other underlying offense. I don't think it takes anything away from law enforcement at all.
I agree with you on a lot of it, but especially where I go is where you're including higher education in that particularly as well. That one, for all the grounds that we've achieved, especially as women and for our safety and things like that, that kind of makes me very nervous with some of these things with having higher ed included that and campuses of higher ed included on that.
And Delegate, I would also say that the word molest there is a little confusing. It's an old term that just means to disturb, or it's another way of saying disturb. It's not really used in a sexual context. I don't have any data on whether it's actually been charged in a sexual context, but it has another meaning, and that's what it was the intent of the word there.
Okay, yeah, and so I would just say, words have meaning, and then the other one is there anything that is the state's attorney office that I contacted was a little concerned about the police not having any jurisdiction to even investigate charges if some of these were removed or rolled back or taken away. Would that be under the case? Because it would have to reach a certain level for them to investigate, or
It would have to be a criminal provision that they violated. The thing is that Maryland school discipline already has disruption as a category. So, and there is out of school suspension, in school suspension, restorative practices. If it doesn't rise to the level of a crime, school systems have ways to respond. And the question is, what is referring it to the Department of Juvenile Services for solely disrupting school operations? What are they hoping to achieve? And I've been listening to a lot of hearings, and you talk about the resources of DJS. And I've also trained DJS case workers over many years, and they will tell you that these kinds of charges are eating up their time and resources unnecessarily. Like, what does a school system think they're going to get by charging a child with disrupting school operation? If it's a larger, more dangerous offense, that child's going to be charged with that. But if it's solely disrupting school operations, there are other more productive interventions that will help make the whole community safer than taking up the time and energy of the Department of Juvenile Services.
Thank you. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you, ma'am.
Delegate Young, then Delegate Attar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had to ask a question because I had to get this suit on the TV today. Thank you, Delegate Root, for the bill. Really quickly, I just want to say a few things. First, I mean, I think it's clear. I was able to pull up the data that is also, or the reporting that's required under the bill, or rather under the current law, I should say. It's a few things I have to ask about that. First, just to be clear, your bill is not intended to impact that reporting. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Your bill is not intended to impact the reporting requirement that is.
No.
Right.
No.
So I do want to maybe offline engage with you in a conversation about what is being reported since it's in your bill. There's a portion that talks about referrals for prosecution, and of course we're talking about school to prison pipeline, but as I look at the report, it doesn't reflect any referrals to prosecution in the report over the last 4 years. So I think that kind of is information that we probably want to try to push them to actually report on in the next fiscal. Additionally, when I look at the reporting, I think that it could probably be upgraded to a dashboard because right now it's just, a chart and it doesn't break down by age or grade or school district, et cetera. So it's really hard, I think, based on the current reporting, to dial in a real granular way on where the source of the school to prison pipeline is, but the basis is there. So I guess I'm on a little bit of commentary. So let me get it. Is that so in here somewhere? But just to clarify though, I mean, it looks like, again, and it's been belabored, so that your focus is not to have a negative impact on current law enforcement, current public safety concerns. So I guess my question is, so I can fit one in here, how can that increased or improved reporting potential, and I want to talk to you about an amendment, have a better, help us have a better insight on what's actually happening on the ground level and how the impact is on kids?
Yeah, I'll just say on the reporting side, that report actually, I just got it yesterday from Maryland State Department of Education, and it was clarified to me that they didn't include the prosecution or the referral to the state's attorney because the school-based arrest report will be coming out in March. And I think they intended that report to be read alongside this report. And so I do think also, you know, that reporting requirement was added in 2022 legislation. It's not part of the current language that we're looking for. And I think it's a little, I'm not sure why they picked those 4 charges or offenses: attendance, arson. You know, it's a little, I don't know, it gives you much information about the school to prison pipeline. The school-based arrest information most certainly does, and that report will be coming out in March, and we'd be very happy to send it to you.
I think one of the things it's supposed to give us is also any other ramifications that a student might have to deal with as a result of a disruption, even before you get to a prosecutorial referral. I mean, it gives us the short-term and long-term suspensions, but that's about it. So again, I just would like to really engage in a conversation about what that could look like moving forward.
Sure, glad to talk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my question was answered a couple of times, but to be clear, if a child commits a crime under the current Maryland statute, this does not affect that, correct?
That's correct, Delegate.
Thank you.
I just have a real quick question, and then Delegate Ebersol's gonna wrap it up. So I can see a scenario in which, so I have 3 kids. I have a 12-year-old in middle school who, you know, I was sent to the office for playing more than 2-hand touch football. He and his football teammate were doing a little too much. And, you know, he tackled him. His football teammate didn't care. Some of the other kids were a little rattled. Could that possibly have been a disruption in schools? And he'd been arrested if the administrator chose to do that?
Well, I would say based on the examples that we provided in our testimony through cases that the public defender's office has seen, yes. And that's the concern, is that this provision is used in such random, arbitrary ways, depending on the administrator and the school. Why are kids in Howard County, Montgomery County not charged, but yet in other jurisdictions they are? It's not, you know, the children are not.
Are you seeing this as, and anyone can answer this on the panel, are you seeing this perhaps being used as a way by teachers, perhaps more inexperienced teachers, or teachers who don't know how to relate to the students, and or administrators? Are you seeing it as a way of discipline when it's really an arrest, so it shouldn't be discipline, but you know, a student talks out in class, so they're being charged with disruption in schools? A student, as you mentioned, won't sit down. My 10-year-old likes to stand up, you know, and the teacher said, as long as you're not being disruptive, that's fine. Are you seeing it being used more as a tool for discipline, as opposed to, you know, an arrest is for, it should be for a serious crime?
Exactly. And I think if you look at the work that the Maryland State Department of Education has done over the past 10 years, including the revisions of our school discipline code, there's been significant push to provide positive behavior supports and interventions to kids, recognizing that kids are kids and that we are the adults. And so this bill, this statute, the way it's being implemented in certain jurisdictions is completely counter to the message that at the state level we're receiving in terms of how we are to address behavior issues, how we're to improve school climate, how we're to provide positive behavior supports and interventions, and how through the blueprint we need to support our teachers, right? So Pillar 4 is all about community schools. It's all about bringing social workers, psychologists to the school. We need resources to support not just the students, but also the staff that are in the building.
And if I could just add really quick, one problem with this is the vague nature of the language means that it's applied so differently in different cases. And as you say, one teacher, understands that child needs to stand up, and as long as they're not disrupted, that's okay. Another teacher might not be okay with that. And so the vague nature of the statute allows it to be applied differently.
Delegate
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. I'm glad to see you have the co-sponsor who at one time was trying to figure it out, just as many people are today, but now he's in too. I'm going to ask you pretty much a yes or no question to the sponsor, if I may. Is it your opinion that this bill was never intended to be a disciplinary tool for teachers in school? It was really aimed at people who may have come in from outside the school and commit a crime. And actually, there's plenty of other places where that could apply, but the kind of discipline that we are really drilling down very deep on is fully available. And this bill was never intended to be a tool like that. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Delegate.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate it. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 615. Delegate Grammer, you probably thought you were in judiciary for a minute there. House Bill 671, and you have.
Madam Chair, I do not have a panel, but if you want to do it for a matter of time, I'd welcome anybody who wants to testify beside me.
Okay, but you come on up.
With your permission, I'll get started.
Okay, and there are two folks virtually. We'll do it after.
Sounds good. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 671. House Bill 671 adds public schools to the list of places where it is prohibited to display obscene material to minors. I would like to talk today about family health and the over-sexualization of children, youth, and even adults. Over-sexualization, often referred to as hypersexualization, happens due to increased exposure of sexual material and the behavioral normalization that often follows. This exposure can happen in spaces in which we live, the media we consume, or the communications that we exchange. Over-sexualization has consequences. It influences young people's perception of sexuality, skews their idea of what is normal and what is known to cause dysphoria with an individual's image of themselves. In recent years, percentages of abuse on women by men is skewing to sexual partners who are adolescents due to the normalization of the behaviors that they see. Over-sexualization hinders the ability of youth to have real intimacy later on. Many young people become sexually dysfunctional due to this problem. This bill attempts to address this issue in small part by applying our obscenity laws to public schools, which have become spaces where, on occasion, that either permit or promote over-sexualization via shared or borrowed media. We should protect our youth and protect family health, and we can take one small step to do that by passing House Bill 671.
Whoever'd like to go next, go ahead for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I'm Susie Scott. I'm the chair of the Moms for Liberty Maryland Legislative Committee. There's a true disconnect between what extremist-led organizations deem appropriate for children and what parents think is appropriate. The 10 most challenged books on the American Library Association's so-called banned books list can be found in school libraries across Maryland. The canard that any of these books is banned is missed by the experts at the ALA. They are peddling a false narrative of book banning to hide their motive. The ALA has a radical political agenda to queer schools. It starts at the top with the current president, Emily Drabinski. Even Ms. Drabinski couldn't believe she had been elected when she sent out a tweet saying, quote, "I just cannot believe that a Marxist lesbian who believes that collective power is possible to build and can be wielded for a better world is the president-elect of the ALA Library Association. I'm so excited for what we will do together. Solidarity," unquote. After Ms. Drabinski said the quiet part out loud, the tweet was deleted, but the ALA and their powerful lobby are hard at work stalking every school library with material that can't be read at a school board meeting. For each of the challenged books on the 2022 list, the ALA cites claim to be sexually explicit. Will you tell me, this is the most challenged book, Genderqueer. It's a graphic novel, and there's just page after page of obscene depictions. A quick flip through it will show that this, the average parent has a right to question whether this is tax dollar well spent. Some of the other challenged books are All Boys Aren't Blue, which is contains underage incest. Lawn Boy has a passage about 10-year-old boys performing oral sex on each other. This book is gay, has a guide on how to hook up with strangers on gay sex apps. The claims of parents are well-founded. We support and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 671. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Jeff Trimbath, and I'm the president of the Maryland Family Institute. Thank you for allowing me to testify in support of House Bill 671 and its efforts to criminalize the displaying of porn and smut to minors. This bill strengthens Section 11-203 of the Criminal Code, which criminalizes distributing and exhibiting child porn, sharing porn with minors, hiring minors to participate in porn films, creating visual representations of children engaged in sex acts, or even showing minors those images. During this session, we have supported the bipartisan initiative led by Senator James in the Senate to increase penalties for offenders convicted under these and related acts, and that is working its way through the legislature right now. But there's more to be done, and this current bill is expanding these efforts to include our schools and to include drawings and illustrations. Whereas a newsstand or another place of public business, it's illegal for an owner of that business to display porn and smut. Current law, curiously, does not extend that prohibition to public schools. This bill fixes that omission. It also means that drawings and other illustrations that depict the very same porn and smut that is illegal in every business, establishment, and sector of our state are allowed in schools. This bill ends that hypocrisy. If it's criminal on a newsstand, it should be criminal in our schools. If it's outlawed in print, it certainly should be outlawed in our minor classrooms. It is for these reasons that we encourage a favorable consideration of House Bill 671, asking you to close the porn and smut loophole for minors and to protect Maryland's greatest resource, our children. Thank you.
Please support HB 0671, a critical measure aimed at closing.
Ma'am, could you tell us your name, please?
Oh, Jolie McShane. I'm from Baltimore County. A crucial measure aimed at closing a loophole that permits the inclusion of pornographic cartoons or illustrations in children's books. These materials pose a significant risk to our children who are not yet equipped with cognitive maturity to comprehend such material. As parents, we see that such exposure leads to a lasting relationship confusion, destabilizes the family, and contributes to societal decay. Books like Genderqueer and Lawn Boy in our public schools, under the guise of educational materials for those who identify as non-binary or asexual, is pure nonsense. Why do children need to read how to perform sexual acts, I will quote from Lawn Boy, suck dicks, and hump each other? This is clearly not educational.
Okay, we're gonna watch our language, please, here in the committee.
and it's in our schools.
You can watch your language when you're testifying in this committee. Thank you.
The FBI statistics reveal 1 out of every 7 children falls victim to sexual abuse, leaving them voiceless. The CDC warns against exposing sexually abused children to pornographic materials as it exacerbates trauma and leads to mental health issues, including depression and suicide. That's 1 out of 7. For example, Lawn Boy is 312 pages long, includes the word that rhymes with duck 107 times, and has 18 obscene sexual scenes. Other states have already enacted legislations to remove such materials from school libraries to uphold existing laws regarding pornography and obscenity. I have yet to encounter a Baltimore County taxpayer who is not shocked by this flyer, and I'll leave them behind and you can see it. Thank you.
We have 2 folks. Let's see if they're here. Peggy Cairns and Kashena Cross. Whoever's with us.
Hello, it's Kashina Cross. Thank you so much. I am also in favor of 671. I do agree with the education of our youth relative to the protection of their rights to virginity and their protection of their rights to the innocence that we must protect our children. I am in agreement as a parent that I need to be aware of the material that will be taught during any class, but I am also in agreement that this is probably a class for a much later year group, more so 9th, 10th grade. The fact that this is being taught to 5th graders is really a strange place to be. I know technology is out there. We cannot protect them from the different games that they're playing online and all of the other obscenities, but that is a parent responsibility to control and put parental controls on these iPhones and different things. When it comes down to the educational system, it is critical, as is stated in House Bill 671, that we take the onus and the responsibility to ensure the protection of our most valuable asset for our children, which is their innocence. I'm critical about the innocence of our children because if we let them get too far too soon, they do not have the maturity to combat, and they find themselves victim to sex trafficking, human trafficking, and other things, hunting for experimenting on adult behavior. I do urge the committee to agree with House Bill 671 and do combat what we have seen as parents, way too much stimulation in our young folks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Peggy Cairns, please, for 2 minutes.
I'm Peggy Cairns, and I'm the Education Chair of the Maryland Coalition Against Pornography, where I've volunteered since 1991. I'm a retired law librarian with the U.S. Department of Justice and a mother and a grandmother. I was once a public secondary school librarian media specialist in Dade County, Florida, and Prince George's County, Maryland. So I do have some idea of what this bill will entail. I love libraries and their mission. I also have a deep heart for kids and particularly their innocence and vulnerability. Isn't it fitting that we are addressing the issue of obscenity on Valentine's Day when we express and celebrate and honor love? What a contrast to what obscenity represents, the opposite, a tool of objectification, disrespect, a tawdry voyeurism that desecrates what ought to be a tool of emotional bonding that is one of the pinnacles of human beings. Is this crass, ignoble obscenity what we want to lift up in school libraries in front of our children and pay for it with taxpayer dollars? When children see obscenity, it leaves an indelible mark, and not for the good. They cannot unsee it or put it in perspective. It lacks educational context and is divorced from the cultural or moral influences and upbringing which families want to inculcate in their children. Consider the dangers: encouraging youth to become sexually active earlier, enticement to promiscuity, and distorted views on what is healthy sexuality when there's so much violence and degradation in these materials. Sadly, exposure is occurring to children at younger and younger ages, often from older kids introducing these images to younger kids before their brains are mature enough to process what they are seeing. And if you want an example of what you might find, think about Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. So in conclusion, I want to ask you to remember that it takes a village to raise a child, and I urge a favorable report on HB 671. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And these are pretty straightforward questions, so if we can just keep the answer straightforward and quick here. You all named a few of the books. Can you just repeat the names of a few of the books that you had mentioned earlier?
Gender Queer, Lawn Boy.
And what about you, ma'am?
All Boys Aren't Blue, Flamer is another one that is in our school libraries in Harford County that parents are objecting to.
Understood. Thank you. And so most of these books that you mentioned have either LGBTQ characters or themes. Are there any books with heterosexual characters that you can think of that wouldn't meet the standards or would be considered obscene?
Well, I'm from judiciary, so let me give you the long answer. So there's a reason I didn't bring a book today, because I think that bringing a book kind of distracts us from the problem. And if you learn about the nature of the issue, this generation coming up right now is completely dysfunctional sexually, and it's really causing havoc. I mean, they're getting to the adult age and they have complete erectile dysfunction, hormone problems, inability to form relationships, inability to form social relationships. And there's, for the first time in a long time, a lot of work done on the issue of sexual content, specifically pornography, but not exclusive to pornography. So I think you have a valid and legitimate question. Is there a heterosexual book? I don't know. I see the point you're getting at.
I think it's an important point. And can anyone cite a book with a heterosexual?
Playboy, Hustler. For example, Playboy, you know, a lot of our obscenity laws offers constitutional protections on things that are educational, political. You could read a Playboy and have a great article on the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment.
Is Playboy being distributed in school libraries right now?
No,
so
but
of the books that are in our libraries right now.
Therein lies the problem, is that socially we would say, of course, Playboy, you couldn't bring that in schools. But we have, I haven't read these books on the table here today, but I guarantee you there's penetration. I guarantee you there is a lot of sexual content that, frankly, I think it's wrong to have in proximity to our youth who are in schools. And I think it's a detriment to their health. And if you don't like the bill in front of you, I would say that it's an obligation of this committee to do something.
So, Delegate, respectfully, Playboy is not offered in our school libraries based on my understanding right now.
This is.
Can
This is, let's talk about it. It's a guide to, what's it say? I don't have my glasses. A teen's guide to sex, relationships, and being a human. And there's, you know, there's heterosexual sex in here. There's homosexual sex. There's all kinds of, you know, very graphic depictions of many kinds of sexual activity. This does not belong in a public school library.
I'll just make the case, and based on your earlier testimony, usually when we refer to this content, we're referring to content that has LGBTQ characters and themes. I think you made that case earlier today. So just wanted to make sure that was noted as well. And if someone has a list of heterosexual books with characters and themes that you consider to be inappropriate, I'd look forward to seeing that list. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you.
Delegate Grammer. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 671. Delegate Feldmark, House Bill 789. And you have a panel, Holly Kleiderline, Samantha Zwirling.
Unfortunately, Holly wasn't able to make it.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for your attention. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark, and I'm pleased to be here to present House Bill 789. Those of you who were on the committee last year will recognize this legislation, and for those who were not, don't worry, it's pretty straightforward. The goal of this bill is to help address staffing shortages in our schools that are affecting our students and educators, and to continue to incentivize our educators in all occupation categories to strive for top credentials. As you know, a key focus of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future was to provide career growth and advancement opportunities for teachers without having to leave the classroom. This bill would extend the salary increases to educators who are not designated as the teacher of record, but still provide instruction and services to students and have received their national board certification. This is aligned with the values of the Blueprint and mirrors the salary increases that teachers of record already received under the Blueprint legislation. So some of the employees who would be captured by this provision and helped by this legislation would be reading specialists, math specialists, and school counselors. Given that our students are still struggling in math and reading after the pandemic, it's critical that these additional professionals help get them back on track. And just like classroom teachers, if one of these employees has their national board certification and works in high-need schools, they would be eligible for an additional salary increase. This ensures that our high-need schools get the best of the best. This bill also extends parallel salary increases to other qualified educators in our schools, like school psychologists and speech pathologists. These professionals are not teachers and therefore not eligible for national board certification, but are eligible for high national credentials within their own fields and should be recognized as such, especially in our current crisis dealing with mental health needs in our schools. So we're simply taking the principles of the Blueprint and covering what I think honestly was an oversight. These are professionals in our schools who are absolutely critical to education, and we want them to be the best of the best, and they should be compensated for those high credentials. Before I close, I do just want to clarify one point because I think there's been a little bit of confusion. If you look at the drafting of the bill, this bill includes the $60,000 minimum salary that was part of the Blueprint. We are not changing that or expanding that at all. This is simply about expanding who can be eligible for the additional salary increase for national board certification or a parallel high credential in another field. So with that, I look forward to your questions. I see at least one of you is eager to go. And respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 789. Thank you.
Thank you to the committee. My name is Samantha Zwirling. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association, representing 75,000 educators in the state of Maryland. I want to thank Delegate Feldmark for her commitment to this bill and to this issue. We had been working on this bill because educators had been asking for it. And I think that a lot of you actually have heard from educators in your districts asking for this. The school counselors who you'll hear from have been very active on this, school psychologists. We're not seeing parity in our schools when it comes to the salary increases as it relates to these high certifications. The Blueprint has made a commitment to trying to increase standards to get folks to that national board certification. So you have folks who are able to receive their national board certification, who have received that, who have worked towards that, are the best of the best, are working in high need schools. But because of the way that teacher was defined in the Blueprint as it relates to these salary increases, they are not eligible for these salary increases. And so you have two people working in a building serving students who both have these high credentials. One is getting getting the salary increase and one is not. So that's really kind of the basis of the bill. And then as Delegate Feldmark talked about, it includes other folks, related kind of service providers, occupational therapists and others, who there is not a national board certification for them, but in their fields, they have these high credentials. And so this is important as we look and make sure that folks are encouraged to keep reaching those high standards and to work in the schools that need them the most. As Delegate Feldmark said, we are not intending to extend the $60,000 starting salary to every employee in the building. So that was just kind of a drafting thing. But thank you for the time. This is one of MSCA's top priorities for this session. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are a group of people signed up virtually. So I'll call them Sarah Quirk, William Fluke, Kim McDonald, Daniel Helton, and Janet Fox. So we'll see who comes up first.
Thank you for the time.
Okay, Ms. Quirk, for 2 minutes, please. You can go ahead, Ms. Quirk. Can you hear me? You can go ahead and testify. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yep. I can hear you. We can hear you. You can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, Madam Atterbury, Chair, Madam Atterbury, Madam Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Sarah Quirk, and I am a certified occupational therapy assistant for the past 17 years. I've had the pleasure of working with a severe and profound population in Baltimore County Public Schools. I'm here today to share my support for House Bill 789. I have many years' experience working in mental health and trauma. My education and continued professional development make me a valuable healthcare member of the school system. I work closely with students, teachers, and parents, counselors to help shape our students into productive members of society. My training in educational and vocational adaptations have prepared me to work with our current population. School-based OTs and OTAs help students break educational barriers with developing careful treatment plans incorporating physical and cognitive adaptations. Ruth Ryder, the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education, recently addressed the American Occupational Therapy Association at an educational summit. Ryder's attendance at the Educational Summit helped raise awareness among educators and practitioners about the benefits of incorporating occupational therapy into school mental health programs to achieve a holistic and comprehensive approach to student success. Schools have shortages of not only teachers, but healthcare providers like OTs and OTAs because of discouraging pay scales. I encourage your committee to carefully look at the Blueprint's career ladder for educators. The ladder should include an extension in order to address the shortage of healthcare providers. So we can attract OTs and OTAs for improved student educational outcomes. I thank you for your time, and I apologize for the background noise.
That's okay. Thank you for taking the time to testify. Okay, William Fluke. Louisa, who's next? Okay.
Good
William
afternoon.
Fluke.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bill Fluke. I'm a retired school psychologist. Over the past 50 years, I've devoted my career to addressing the mental and behavioral health challenges of kids in school. And I'm speaking today for the Maryland School Psychologists Association in strong support of this bill. MSPA is pleased that the sponsors have provided for salary increases for school psychologists and for other essential support staff in this bill. Specifically, we commend the inclusion of salary increases for school psychologists to obtain our alternative high-quality educator certificate. That's the NCSP, Nationally Certified School Psychologist, and for those who serve in low-performing schools in their districts. These provisions of the bill are particularly important for school psychologists who provide comprehensive psychological services to Maryland students, including counseling, consultation, and assessment. We're acutely aware of the increasingly serious mental health needs of many of our students, and we're dedicated to helping to address those needs in our schools. Yet many school psychologists are working with very heavy caseloads, and they're spread so thin that they simply cannot help many of the students who need their support. And Maryland is facing a severe and worsening shortage in this area, with many school districts currently finding themselves unable to fill the existing positions which they have budgeted for. Additionally, none of our school systems are close to meeting the nationally recognized ratio of 500 students per school psychologist. Most of them are looking at ratios more than twice that size. House Bill 789 will help to address this problem by boosting incentives for hiring and retaining high-quality school psychologists in Maryland schools. MSP is grateful to be included in this bill. We urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim McDonald.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, delegates, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Kimberly McDonald. I'm a high school counselor in Calvert County Public Schools. I've been a member of the Calvert County community for almost 11 years and served as a school counselor for the past 20 years. Professional development has remained very important to me in that not only does it foster individual growth, but it positively impacts the school community. Research has shown that students learn more from a national board certified teacher than a non-NBCT, according to the NBCT website. 91% of educators who hold national board status report a change in their instructional practices to include more use of data and a deepening of their content knowledge. This was reason enough for me to pursue national boards. In 2010, I attained national boards in the area of school counseling. In 2019, I renewed my national boards with the understanding there would be no financial compensation or rewards, as this was the case in Calvert County Public Schools. It was critical for me to uphold the standard of education and to continue to provide top-notch research-based services to my school community. In the blueprint, one of the programs includes increasing the salary by $10,000 for participating national board certified teachers. However, school counselors are excluded from this program because our role is not clearly defined in the blueprint. I'm not eligible to receive the same salary increase for the same national board certification I achieved alongside other educators. How is this equitable and fair to compensate some professionals who hold certification, but deny the same compensation to other professionals who hold the same certification? It's important to emphasize that school counselors are educators. We deliver counseling lessons to students in assemblies, classes, in small groups, and individually. Teaching takes place in many entities to include an auditorium, a classroom, and our offices. Whereas the blueprint defines teachers as teaching in the classroom setting, school counselors are not limited as such. Thank you for your opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next, Daniela Helton.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniela Helton, and I'm a nationally board certified NBCT school counselor at Little Bennett Elementary School in Clarksburg, Maryland. I strongly support House Bill 789, primary and secondary education, public school employees' salaries. There's a lot of confusion about the salary enhancement from the Maryland Blueprint as related to school counselors. After contacting the various Maryland school districts, I have found that 4 out of 24 school districts give school counselors the $10,000 salary enhancement. 8 districts provide school counselors with salary enhancements that range from $2,000 to $5,000. And the remaining 12 districts do not give any salary enhancements to NBCT school counselors. I do not believe the blueprint's intent was to cause such inequity. On the contrary, the goal is to create an increased number of highly qualified educators to foster student success. In a recent survey I conducted in Montgomery County, 68% of 143 school counselors reported that they would engage in the NBCT professional learning process if the salary enhancement was equitable and school counselors were included. How unfortunate that our students are missing out on the benefits they could reap from highly skilled mental health educators. As an active school counselor, I teach 30 different classes and I provide ongoing social emotional lessons throughout the school year. Counseling groups are also available for students in order to address topics such as family changes, grief, anxiety, anger, and social skills. Individual counseling sessions take place multiple times a day for students who need to speak to me so that I can listen and give support. I provide multiple ways of direct service to students, and I partner and co-teach with teachers to help children. Students in Maryland deserve the finest mental health educators. I ask the committee for a favorable committee report on House Bill 789 to ensure this happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Janet Fox for 2 minutes, please.
Okay,
Go ahead whenever you're ready, Ms. Fox, for 2 minutes.
thank you. I'd like to start by saying for the record, I am in favor of House Bill 789. I was registered as in favor with amendment, but I am in favor. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Janet Fox. I've been an occupational therapist for 33 years, with the last 23 years working for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. OTs help students achieve positive learning outcomes and help prepare them for further education, employment, or independent living. I'd like to share my involvement with 2 former students. Student 1, I met B when she entered kindergarten. She was in a wheelchair and dependent for everything. She was unable to speak or communicate. She could not feed herself, play with other children, or complete classroom activities. But we knew she was very smart. As part of her school team, we worked very hard to maximize her quality of education. Before B left elementary school, she had learned to drive her wheelchair, was able to use a device to communicate and complete academic activities, was engaged with children both in the classroom and on the playground, and could feed herself lunch. B is now in the 12th grade, duly enrolled at Anne Arundel Community College, and wants to be a writer or teacher. Student 2, K, is in the 11th grade, in a wheelchair, uses a device. His teachers approached me about an issue on the job site. It was taking both teachers to perform his hygiene, leaving the other students unsupervised. After discussing this very personal subject with K, I was able to begin helping him to perform his own hygiene using adaptive equipment. Kay lost his main support, his mother, last year to cancer. He is thrilled at the thought of being able to perform this task independently at school, at his job site, at home, and in the community. I urge that you recognize and support that OTs and CODAs are an integral part of a child's educational team, and urge that you have a favorable vote for House Bill 789. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions, Delegate Buckle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been waiting a little bit. I think I forgot half of my question, but I do. Some of those people actually help me remember it. Delegate Feldmark, who does this apply to? I'm interested, are we picking up people like school counselors, school psychologists, occupational therapists? Or are we also picking up people who are teachers? Not that there's a distinction. I'm just wondering, who's getting picked up and advanced within this blueprint mandatory minimum salary structure?
So, I think what we're focused on here is the additional salary, right? The additional salary for national board certification, or under this bill, a comparable high-level credential in another field, right? So teachers who are the teacher of record in a classroom are already eligible for that. And we're saying it should extend to other teachers like the math specialists, reading specialists, school counselors who are eligible to receive national board certification because they are professionally teachers. They're just not in the teacher of record role in a classroom, right?
Okay.
So for those folks, it's the exact same credential, national board certification. And for that exact same credential, we're saying they should get the exact same
The only
additional
difference is
salary.
that they're not the day-to-day classroom teacher in third grade at PS 181. They might serve a whole school or multiple
Right.
schools as a reading or math.
Right.
Oh, specialist. Okay.
Right.
I get that 100%.
And so that's the one side, and the other is saying there are these other educators who are critical to, as we heard in the testimony, right? Critical to the education of our students.
Mhm.
But professionally, they're not teachers. They may be a psychologist or an occupational therapist, right? A speech pathologist. So those folks, because they're not teachers, they're not eligible for national board certification, which is a teaching credential, right? But within those fields, within their
There's something
discipline,
correlates.
there are comparable high-level credentials that should be incentivized the same way.
And does the bill spell out what they were? You may or not may. My daughter's a school counselor in the public school system. I know how how important that is, can be.
Mhm.
Is there something in the bill that spells out what's the corollary for national board certified as a teacher versus such and such a certification or a high level achievement
So-
in these other fields?
Right. It would be to be designated by, I believe it's the state board and PSTEP.
PSTEB, which is
Right.
the professional standards and teaching board. So they set the standards for teachers. And I did also just want to clarify to the beginning of your question, this bill really has nothing to do with the $60,000 salary. I know it is written
Right.
in from drafting, but this is all about those
This is
additional
about the
salaries.
bump up if you have the additional
Correct.
training
Correct.
and certification.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. And the fiscal note, I mean, it doesn't seem to be that large. Like that was my fear when I looked at it initially an hour or two ago, like, oh, it's going to be a huge thing, but is
So-
your sense that it's not really going to be a huge increase? cost?
So the fiscal note is interesting.
That's a way of putting it.
So the fiscal note does not quantify an estimated impact. And the fiscal note seems to assume that this would all be funded at the local
Right.
level.
Which it would.
Now, well, my intent is that it would be treated the exact same way as the
Exactly.
$10,000 that is
For
included in the
classroom teaching.
blueprint. So it's a shared expense. So clearly there would be some fiscal impact. I don't think we have a real specific estimate, but I personally believe this was an oversight in the blueprint, right? We had a clear intention in what we were trying to do with providing the additional salary for, getting the best of the best, right? And wanting to incentivize teachers to, go for that high level certification. I think this is the same thing. We just missed some people in how it was defined.
I appreciate it. I think it's probably the right idea. Just want to, make sure we can afford it, but I really do think that it's probably the logical thing to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, kind of expanding on that. It does say like an illustrative, like as far as the number of qualified employees, it does say that it would increase by 80 to 137 million annually. So that's not like inconsequential. Have you talked to any of the local school systems to see kind of where they are with this, how they feel about it? If this is a need that they felt was overlooked, like as far as in their contract negotiations or anything like that?
So do you want to?
Well, I was gonna say, I believe there is testimony from MABE on this that is favorable.
I mean, like your actual school system. Have you talked to any of your actual?
I mean, they represent the school systems, but
So I've not this year discussed it with my school system. I did last year, and the primary concern was as the fiscal note laid it out, it being primarily or completely a local expense, and they would want to see that shared. Now, I do think, in all fairness, I think my school system is concerned about any additional expense. And I understand that. And as I said earlier, I think this is the spirit of what we intended to do with the blueprint. And frankly, we missed some really important folks.
I guess,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 789, last bill of the day, House Bill 696. Delegate Plavkovich Carr, and your panel, I'm told, is Scott Eckert, Laura Hale, Julia Gross, and Elizabeth Sachs.
Madam Chair, appreciate you calling up my panel. For the record, Delegate Julie Plavkovich Carr, here to present House Bill 696. This bill would make breakfast and lunch free for all public school students. The need for this bill is clear. Even though Maryland is one of the wealthiest states in the nation, 1 in 8 children in our state face hunger on a daily basis. 1 in 8 kids. There are children going hungry in every school in our state. Even in the counties and schools that we view as affluent, there are students who can't afford to eat lunch and who come to school without having had breakfast. That's because the existing free and reduced price meals program only covers a small sliver of families who have economic needs. Many more families don't qualify for free meals because of their income, but that doesn't mean that they aren't struggling financially. For instance, a child being raised by a single parent who makes $37,000 a year doesn't qualify for free lunch. For a family of 4 with 2 children, the income cutoff is just over $55,500. I don't think any of us look at families in those circumstances and think that they are well off. Objectively, these income levels are well below the self-sufficiency standard for every county in Maryland. We have a system that provides free lunches and breakfasts for some, but not enough students. And that matters. For many students, meals served at school are the highest quality meal that they receive in a given day. And it may be the only food they receive in a given day. We as a body are making historic investments in our public schools through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future to ensure that every child receives a world-class education. Yet these necessary investments will not meet their full potential when students are hungry. Simply put, hungry kids don't learn well. I'm fully aware of the large fiscal note on this bill, but I'm also confident that we will get a much bigger return on investment. Research shows that for every dollar spent on school meal programs, $2 in health and economic benefits are returned. Student academic performance increases, and schools have less paperwork and administrative burden. That's why after the expiration of the nationwide free school lunch program, 8 other states made free school meals a permanent policy. And I'm going to conclude where I started. We're one of the wealthiest states in the nation, yet 1 in 8 kids are hungry. I know that this is something that we all care about, and hopefully we can figure out a path forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Atterbury, Sponsor Delegate Plavkovich Carr, and members of the committee. My name is Scott Eckert. I'm the Director of Food and Nutrition for Cecil County Public Schools. I'm here in support of House Bill 696, which would make school breakfast and lunch available to all students at no cost in the state of Maryland. School meals play such a vital role in a student's success in their academics. In our schools, which participate in the USDA Community Eligibility Program, we have seen improved attendance, a reduction in behavioral referrals, as well as an increase in consumption of nutritious foods such as fruits and vegetables. In addition to the direct benefits to the students, I've spoken with parents of children who benefit from free meals in our CEP schools. They tell me what a relief this is for their family budget to not have to purchase food for breakfast and lunch on the days that their kids are in school. This bill will make it possible for us to expand this benefit to all the students and their families in the district. Food insecurity is a real problem for many folks in our communities. Children that deal with this reality really struggle to succeed in their academics. With all the change we are seeing in our state that are focused on making education better in the state of Maryland, making school meals free for all goes hand in hand with that objective. Full bellies lead to full minds. There are already several states in the United States of America that have made this leap. It's time that Maryland jump on board and make healthy school meals available to all students at no cost, part of their school day. Thank you, Chairman, Sponsor Delegate, and rest of the committee for allowing me to testify today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Hale. I'm Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. And thank you all to the committee and to the chair for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here today to ask the committee to have a heart and fund school meals. I'm the Heart Association. I had to make a heart joke, y'all. So I really appreciate your time today. We really have the space to be able to look at What does it mean to make sure that every kid gets fed and what that means here in Maryland? Across the way, we have a mixed bag here in Maryland where some schools have been able to participate in some federal programs to really maximize it. And with this bill, we're really able to step up and see what this could mean for all students. We're really hitting at what I'd term the missing middle. This idea of families that make too much money to qualify for the free and reduced price lunch program, but not enough to really keep going. And from an economic standpoint, as we've done the math, it makes more sense to feed every kid than to parse out one group or another, just due to paperwork and implementation processes. We really see also overall that looking at this across the way that, you know, we would never think of charging a kid to ride the bus to go to school or for textbooks to be able to succeed and have what they need. Why are we parsing out who are we charging for food at the end of the day? And so really, I think here we're also, if we don't pass this bill, we're leaving federal money on the table. Because of the Community Eligibility Program, the CEP program, the federal government has actually made it where most of the counties in Maryland now qualify to move all of their schools into this program. But without state matching funds, it doesn't make economic sense for all the counties to be able to do that. And so we need to be able to step up and bring forward so that all counties and all kids can get fed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for this time to speak. My name is Julia Gross. I'm here on behalf of Maryland Hunger Solutions in support of this bill. Bear with me, I know you heard this story last year when this bill was heard, but I think it bears repeating. One of the first calls that I received when I started working at Maryland Hunger Solutions was from a single mother who was on SNAP, whose daughter had been going through the lunch line and every single day for a month had been having her meal taken away from her and replaced with a cold cheese sandwich. Because although she was eligible and enrolled in the free meal program, her account had been mistakenly charged and it showed that she had a negative balance. And on that call, her mother's question was really simple. She knew that that entire month could not be making up with her daughter, but she wanted to know what we could do moving forward to make sure that never happened again. And I will say that a lot of things have changed in Maryland over the past 5 years. We have really incredible food and nutrition departments and staff who work day in and day out and really go above and beyond to make sure that that never happens. But we also know that unfortunately school meal debt and the stigma associated with these programs is never going to go away while we're continuing to use the tiered payment model that we use right now that allows far too many children to fall through the cracks. This system places the heavy burden of school meal debt on families and also on our school nutrition departments that are often running on razor-thin margins. So I'll just conclude by saying that this bill lifts those burdens from both our families and our school systems. We've seen healthy school meals for all work during the pandemic. We've seen it work in CEP schools across the state. Right now we have 651 schools participating in that program, but it's time that we expand that to the rest of our schools. Hungry kids can't wait another year for this around, which is why we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Will you confirm it? Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Sachs, and I'm the Deputy County Administrative Officer for Health and Community Services in Baltimore County. Baltimore County absolutely supports this bill because it will fill a critical future funding gap for us and a funding gap overall, and allow in Baltimore County our ability to continue offering free breakfast and lunch to all students. As you've heard, I mean, no student should be left to come to school on an empty stomach. There's, they score lower on exams, they struggle to pay attention. And as was mentioned, at the start of the pandemic, the federal government stepped in to cover the cost of meals for all students. And this year, our school system, Baltimore County Public Schools, is able to do the same in all schools countywide. And the results are worth noting. So far, year to date, we've been serving 32% more breakfasts and 21% more lunches because we are able this year to do countywide all students meal service. Now, this is actual data, it's actual participation, which suggests if you have the food, the kids will take it, and we hope those numbers will increase. But it also, as was mentioned, means that all students, including those now who are eligible, but maybe they don't have their paperwork in, or maybe their families are all of a sudden facing financial hardship, but they didn't get the paperwork in, so they don't qualify. And so at least this year, they can get the 2 meals a day at school because we can afford the universal coverage. Also, it reduces the stigma, and that was alluded to. You're not that kid who's in the line. Everybody's getting the same thing. But with federal funding sunsetting and constrained county budgets, we need the state to step in and help us fill this gap. And that's why we're here today on behalf of the county. I am on behalf of Baltimore County Public Schools to urge support for this bill. Our kids really, really depend on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions for this first panel? Delegate Fair.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill forward again this year. My question cuts to the stigma question. I think a lot of times we think about this issue and we think about low-income families who are struggling, but my question's 2 parts, and I'm just going to posit both of them, and then anybody's welcome to, one of you want to jump in and answer it. Will kids who are of means starve throughout the day, in your experience, versus facing the stigmatization of having to go to the school and admit that they didn't bring their school lunch money that day, or that they didn't have access to food that day? Would they rather sit there quietly and starve? And I guess the other part of that question then is, what does that stigmatization look like as a student body when it comes to food insecurity?
Well, I can say from my perspective, students that have the means to pay, they know, at least in my school system, that, you know, no one will be refused a meal if they don't have the means to pay that day. Typically what would happen is if they weren't able to pay that day, you know, they'll come in the next day with money and they'll pay either for the meal from yesterday or the day before. But the parents also have the ability to put money on a student's account through online payments and things of that nature. But I think it's not only in my system, but I think in pretty much every system, that nobody's really refusing anybody a meal these days. So the stigma of a student with means not having money for that day would, I don't think that would occur. It doesn't occur much, at least in Cecil County, I can say for sure.
I think we've seen as well, though, with and some of the students who were able to come out last year, this year, a bunch of them have a really cool student government opportunity. So that's why they're not here today. But one of the kids I think about, his name is Sammy, is he talks about how he didn't want to be seen as the one with needs and not even knowing where the opportunities were. And he had friends that were kind of helping him out, but he went hungry for a lot of the year, even when ultimately his family made him too much to qualify, but not enough to be able to really pay. And so I really do think that there's a lot that's definitely happening behind the scenes and from students and the student stories that I've heard, although there's been a lot of improvement about where it is, that there still is this need and the stigma around, you know, housing and moving to the community eligibility program that we've seen, like Cecil has done in many of their schools, has made a huge difference. What that means for kids and families to create that even playing field for everyone, certainly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
any other questions? Okay, Delegate Patterson, and then we'll call up the next panel.
Thank you very much. I have a question as it relates to food insecurity. Thank you very much, Delegate, for bringing this to our attention. But I'm also very, very concerned about not only breakfast and lunch, but for the weekend, what's called the backpack programs. Are you aware of any system that offer programs for students to take food home because of insecurities? Just one response is great. Thank you.
I was going to say,
Well, so as part of the National School Lunch Program, we can't really, within the confines of those rules, we can't really provide a meal to take home for the weekend, but there are programs that we work with, especially in our school system, our PPWs that provide through grant money and such, pantries where families in need can reach out and they are provided with a backpack of not only food for the weekend, but maybe some supplies, whether it be toiletries or whatever they might need to get through the weekend to the next week.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Megan Doran. See who's still here. Megan Doran, Susan Gross, Samantha Zwirling, Rabbi Ariel Sadwin. Is that 5 people? I think we have 5 chairs. Okay, I'll call one more person. Nashona Kess. Okay. We'll make it easy. We'll just start to my right. Go on down.
It's on. Okay, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Dr. Susan Gross. I am a nutritionist and I'm an associate practice professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I strongly support House Bill 696, Primary and Secondary Education Breakfast and Lunch Programs, Universal Expansion. I agree with what everyone else has said here before, so I'm not going to repeat that. I want to tell you about my research. I have been studying the impact of the CEP program since 2015, when Baltimore City adopted. In my study, we found that children participating in the CEP program in Baltimore City were 3 times less likely to be food insecure compared to students in non-CEP but eligible schools. In fact, children from the eligible non-participating schools in our study complained of stigma and of not being able to come up with the money for meals each day. In fact, some of the students said that they felt the stigma so much of not having money for school, they would skip meals and they would not want to be identified as needy. Once CEP was established in the Baltimore City schools, those students said it was wonderful. Everyone could go through the line. No one had to worry. In fact, more students were willing to eat lunch. Recently, I've been asking food service directors around the state of Maryland about their experience. And they say that they would love to do CEP if they had the money to bridge the reimbursement that they need to implement it. And that it's a great program. We want all kids to eat, but we need to be able to pay our staff. We need to be able to provide the meals.
Samantha Zwirling here on behalf of the MSCA. We're just a Me Too. Hungry kids can't learn, and we strongly support this bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Doran. I am past president of Maryland School Nutrition Association, and I am here today to express strong support for House Bill 696 by our entire statewide organization in all Maryland school districts. We are the program operators, managers, cooks, and servers in each school and district. The purpose of this bill is universal expansion of breakfast and lunch programs to all primary and secondary students in Maryland, regardless of their household income. Passing this bill would be helpful to the students in the community of St. Mary's County, in which I am the director, and all counties in Maryland. Research has shown that participation in school meals has a sizable impact on student learning. Access to free meals, in particular, improves student health, attendance, and reduces disciplinary infractions. I am in support of this bill as past president and as the director of St. Mary County Public Schools. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Rabbi Ariel Sadwin, Executive Director of Agudath Israel, Maryland, representing 30 Jewish schools. I also deliver this testimony on behalf of Maryland CAPE, the state's non-public school coalition, representing over 1,000 non-public schools. I am also a Me Too on this bill, House Bill 696, and we're very grateful for the meal programs that we have in the state of Maryland for both public and non-public schools, and I'm very appreciative to the leaders, the sponsors of the bill, as well as the leaders of the coalition. The merits are quite obvious, as has been articulated, and we request a favorable report as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nashona Kess. I'm the Executive Director for the NAACP Maryland. We are in favor of House Bill 696. Too many of our children lack equitable access to healthy school meals. The National Library of Medicine states that policies for universal free school meals have the potential to contribute to positive health outcomes. I submitted data in our written testimony, but one that I must highlight is that a family of 4 can earn no more than $55,000 annually in order to qualify for a no-cost meal. That's around $3,518 a month after taxes. And according to Rent Hop, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $2,000 a month. Now, Zillow reports the average is $1,725. Going with about $2,000 a month, that leaves about $1,518 a month for every other bill that this family must pay, to include food at home for the remainder of the month. Going a bit further, a family making $60,000 after the average rent of $2,000 will have about $1,810. No wonder our children are hungry. It's no wonder that we have families in debt on school meal accounts. Our children deserve better, and our families deserve better. Let's invest in our children by providing nutrition during the school day to these families at no cost. We are already doing this for certain qualified schools, so let's expand and provide access to free meals for all children. As you can imagine, this substantially impacts families of color, which is of great concern for the NAACP. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask, there was one other person signed up, there's no name in person, from the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council. Okay, sir, if you could come up. And does anyone mind just swapping with him? And then I'll see if there's any questions. And there's one person virtually. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael J. Wilson. I'm the co-chair of the Maryland Food System Resilience Council. The council was created by the legislature, includes community groups, food policy groups, and the state agencies. And our goal is to build sustainability and equity in the food system throughout the state. Briefly, we support this bill, but there are 3 things I really want you to remember. 1, there are kids today in school who can't get a meal because they don't have the resources and they are going to go hungry. Secondly, there are school systems and food nutrition directors who are facing debts as well. I had a conversation with one food nutrition director last week who said their debts normally around $30,000 at this time of the year, and now they're in excess of $100,000. And those are going to impact education programs across the board. Thirdly, the legislature has made progress. You've done a good job. We no longer have reduced price meals in Maryland. We have free meals and meals that kids pay. We've used community eligibility to a great extent, be really supportive, as well as Maryland Meals for Achievement and other programs. I have confidence that the legislature, working with the administration, can bridge this difference. We are hopeful that this bill is the path to getting there, but we cannot have another year where we have no progress and kids are facing hunger and school districts are facing debts, and we have real challenges in the state of Maryland. We have an opportunity to really move forward, and we hope you will be able to help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have our one virtual witness with us? Ms. Cross?
Hello, yes, we do. Thank you so much. I am Kashina Cross, and in this capacity, I represent the Prince George's County NAACP Chapter 7023-Bravo Young Adults Youth Works College Branch is my committees. I'm grateful for this bill to come back around. We supported this bill last year, and we support it again this year. One of the key things that you need to recognize is that youth have a requirement, which is to eat. That is the requirement of life. If we find that there is a need, then fulfilling that need is the requirement of legislation. We are asking that the committee favorably supports all legislation which will allow us to properly feed and allow the education session to transpire without incidents. We have seen that children who are fed have a low violence, retaliation, have more tolerance, have more patience, have more focus. That's the key. I am grateful that this only has a 1-year trial period. I looked at it as a trial period so that this committee for the first time can stop thinking that this is going to be a residual persistency. I'm a 20-year retired veteran from the United States Air Force, and what it taught me was put an end date in mind so people know the investment that is required. 1 year is not a lot. COVID-19, we did it for 3 years where we made free food availabilities at stations, substations all across the state for children to come get breakfast, lunch, and then when they went back to school, we gave them an afternoon snack. You are partnered in this bill with the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, people like the Community Reinvestment Act. Get the banks to support you. These are part of the requirements. Wegmans, Costco, they're in our community. Get them to support. We can do this. We can feed tomorrow's children.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much for being here. And that concludes the testimony on House Bill 696. And that concludes the hearings for today, Valentine's Day of the Ways and Means Committee. Everyone go enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, subcommittee announcements.